Hey guys, tonight we drop you into the heart of the American Southwest, where a sheer canyon wall cradles an ancient village carved into the cliffs, 400 feet above the desert floor. The sun's first rays glint off sandstone, casting long shadows over stone dwellings tucked under a massive overhang. You're not just visiting this extreme outpost of the ancestral Puebloans, you're living here, around 1250 CE, where one wrong step could send you plummeting and a single drought could spell doom. You probably won't survive a day without cursing the lack of guardrails or craving a cold drink that's centuries away. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up curled on a thin mat of woven reeds in a cramped stone room, the air thick with the scent of dust and old smoke. Your bed is a shallow nook carved into the cliff, padded with a scratchy blanket of rabbit fur that's seen better days. The canyon's chill clings to your skin, and a faint howl of wind sneaks through the village's narrow doorway, reminding you just how high up you are. Your home is one of 40 structures in this cliffside village, a marvel of ancestral Puebloan engineering, built between 1232 and 1260 CE, according to tree ring dating. These dates, confirmed by dendrochronology, anchor this place in the 13th century, a time of severe droughts that pushed people to extreme locations like this. Your room's walls are rough sandstone, blackened by years of hearth fires, with a low ceiling that forces you to duck. You share this space with your family, parents, a sibling, maybe a cousin who snores like a startled javelina. There's no door, just a tattered cotton curtain swaying in the breeze, and the floor's packed dirt, gritty under your bare feet. Outside, the village stretches a quarter-mile along the cliff, hidden beneath a natural overhang that shields it from rain and enemies. The only way in is a narrow ledge, a sandstone ramp that drops you below the canyon rim. One misstep and it's a 400-foot plunge to the canyon floor. Good morning indeed. You sit up, wincing as your joints creak. At 20, you're young but already feel the toll of hauling water and grinding corn. Life here is brutal. Most don't live past 40, worn out by labor and the desert's harshness. Your first task is crawling out of your nook without knocking over the clay pot holding last night's corn mush. You peer through the doorway, where the canyon yawns below, a dizzying maze of red rock and shadow. The village is stirring, voices murmur, a dog barks, and the faint clack of a metate grinding corn echoes off the walls. This place is a fortress, built for defense, with a single choke point guarded by a massive stone door. A quirky tidbit: some locals believe sleeping with a juniper twig under your mat warded off bad spirits, so you tuck one in just in case. Historians still argue whether this village was a last-ditch refuge from raiders or a strategic choice for its hidden spring. Either way, it's no accident you're here. This spot's seclusion and water source made it a rare sanctuary in a parched land. You pull on a cotton tunic, stiff with sweat and dust, and lace up yucca fiber sandals that are more holes than sole. No mirror, just a quick pat down to shake off the sand. You're not here to impress, you're here to survive. The village hums with life. Women carry water pots, men stack sandstone, and kids scamper along the ledge like it's a playground, not a death trap. You take a deep breath, the dry air scratching your throat, and step onto the ledge. The day's waiting, and it's not going to be gentle. You step out of your stone nook, heart thudding as your sandals scrape the narrow ledge that's your only path through this cliffside village. The canyon wall looms on one side, cold and unyielding, while a 400-foot drop yawns on the other, daring you to misstep. The air's already warming, a dry heat that sucks the moisture from your lips, and the faint scent of sagebrush drifts up from the canyon floor. You're headed to the village's hidden spring, the lifeblood of this ancestral Puebloan outpost, tucked deep under the overhang. It's a trek that demands focus. One slip, and you're a cautionary tale for the next generation. No pressure, but your family's counting on you to fetch water without turning into canyon confetti. The ledge is barely wide enough for two people to pass, its sandstone surface worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. You inch along, pressing your shoulder against the cliff, feeling the rock's gritty texture through your cotton tunic. Below, the canyon's a dizzying maze of red and gold, with junipers clinging to impossible angles. You're not alone. Other villagers shuffle past, balancing clay pots on their heads, their faces set in grim determination. A kid darts by, fearless, and you mutter about how they must be part goat. The village, built around 1250 CE, was designed for defense, with this narrow path as its only access. Tree ring dating confirms the wooden beams in the kiva roofs were cut between 1232 and 1260, pinning this place to a time when droughts ravaged the southwest. You pass a crumbling wall, its stones stacked without mortar, a testament to the builder's skill. The spring's close now, hidden in a shady alcove where the cliff weeps a slow trickle of water. You kneel, dipping your pot into a shallow pothole, some call it a tank, where the seep collects. The water's cool, tinged with minerals, and you're tempted to splash your face, but every drop is precious. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloan stories say springs like this were guarded by water spirits, and you half expect a grumpy deity to pop up and demand a corn offering. You chuckle, imagining explaining that to your cousin, who'd probably roll her eyes and call you sun-addled. Historians still argue whether this village's extreme location was to hide from rival tribes or to protect the spring during droughts. The lack of weapons suggests peace, but the defensive wall screams caution. You hoist the pot, heavy with water, and start the slow shuffle back. The ledge narrows, and a loose pebble skitters over the edge, vanishing into the void. Your stomach lurches. Heights aren't your friend, but fear's a luxury you can't afford. You pass a neighbor, an old woman with a face like weathered leather, who nods approvingly at your full pot. "Don't spill it," she grumbles, and you bite back a retort. The village comes into view, its 40 structures hugging the overhang like stubborn barnacles. Smoke curls from a kiva, and the clack of grinding stones fills the air. You're sweating now, the pot's weight digging into your shoulder, but you keep moving. A dog yips, chasing a kid who's tossing juniper berries like they're toys. You envy their carefree vibe. Your day's just getting started, and it's all uphill from here, literally. The spring's water is your lifeline, but hauling it daily makes you wonder about the gods' choices. You reach the village's main ledge, wider now, and set the pot down, catching your breath. The canyon's beauty hits you, red rock glowing in the morning light, but beauty doesn't fill bellies. Time to head to the kiva for breakfast, assuming you don't trip over a stray corn cob first. You duck into the kiva, a circular chamber sunk into the cliffside, its cool shadows a brief reprieve from the desert's rising heat. The air's thick with the scent of burning juniper and the faint tang of corn mush simmering in a clay pot over a small hearth. You're here for breakfast, but don't expect a cozy diner vibe. This is a cramped, smoky ritual space where the village's heart beats. You sit cross-legged on a reed mat, shoulder to shoulder with your family, as your mother ladles out a lumpy mix of ground corn and water. It's bland, gritty, and about as exciting as eating a sand sandwich, but it's fuel, and in this extreme village, fuel is everything. You scoop it with your fingers, dodging a speck of soot that drifts from the blackened ceiling like a lazy snowflake. The kiva's walls are plastered with mud, smoothed by generations of hands, and etched with faint spiral patterns that catch the firelight. This isn't just a dining room, it's the village's spiritual hub, where ceremonies and stories bind the community. Built around 1250 CE, kivas like this were central to ancestral Puebloan life, as archaeological digs across the southwest confirm. The roof's low, forcing you to hunch, and a small ventilation shaft lets in a whisper of canyon air, though it mostly swirls the smoke into your eyes. You blink, muttering about how modern HVAC would be a game changer, and your cousin snorts, calling you soft. Fair point. Surviving here means embracing the grit. You chew slowly, the corn mush sticking to your teeth. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed eating corn connected you to the earth's spirit, so you're basically communing with the gods. Or at least that's what you tell yourself to make the meal feel profound. The pot's nearly empty, and your little brother whines for seconds. Your mother shakes her head. Food's tight, especially with the droughts that have scorched the region for decades. You glance at the hearth, its embers glowing like tiny defiant stars. A stray spark lands on your tunic, and you swat it away, joking about becoming a human torch. No one laughs. Fire's no joke when your whole village is a tinderbox of dry reeds and cotton. Historians still argue whether these cliff dwellings were permanent homes or seasonal refuges during times of crisis. The lack of large storage cists here leans toward temporary use, but the kiva's elaborate construction suggests a deeper commitment. You finish your meal, licking your fingers clean, and notice the soot smudged on your hands. The kiva's ceiling is a mosaic of black stains, each one a silent record of countless meals and rituals. Your father mutters about the day's work, grinding corn, repairing walls, and you groan inwardly. The village hums outside with women hauling water and kids tossing juniper berries at a yapping dog. You stand, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and duck through the low doorway, squinting as the canyon's glare hits you. The ledge outside feels wider after the kiva's claustrophobia, but the 400-foot drop still looms, a constant reminder of your precarious life. You grab a medit, a flat grinding stone, and head to a sunny spot near the overhang. Breakfast may be over, but the day's grind, literally, is just beginning. You're already sweating, the desert sun climbing higher, and a fly buzzes around your face like it's auditioning for most annoying villager. You swat it, wishing for a medieval fly swatter, and settle into work. The canyon's quiet, save for the wind's soft howl and the distant clack of stones. It's beautiful, sure, but beauty doesn't stop your stomach from growling or the cliffs from whispering their threats. You've got corn to grind, and the day's not waiting. You settle onto the wide ledge outside the kiva, the canyon's red walls glowing under a sun that's already turning the air into a gritty oven. Your meditate, a smooth grinding stone, sits heavy in front of you, its surface worn from years of use. A pile of dried corn kernels waits in a woven basket, and you grab a mano, a smaller stone that fits your hand like a stubborn brick. It's time to grind corn, the backbone of your diet in this cliffside village. Your arms are already bracing for the ache. The overhang shields you from the worst of the sun, but sweat beads on your forehead as you lean into the work, scraping the mano across the metate with a rhythmic crunch. Every kernel you crush is a tiny victory against hunger, but good luck romanticizing it. This is backbreaking labor, and you're not exactly whistling a happy tune. The village hums around you, a quarter-mile stretch of stone structures tucked under the cliff's massive overhang. Women grind corn nearby, their manos clacking in a steady beat, while kids chase each other along the ledge. They dodge the 400-foot drop like it's just another playground. You envy their energy. Your shoulders are already screaming, and you've barely started. Corn was the lifeblood of the ancestral Puebloans, with archaeological evidence showing they cultivated it despite the Southwest's brutal droughts in the 13th century. You pour another handful of kernels onto the medit, the dust sticking to your sweaty palms. A quirky tidbit, some Puebloans believed the corn spirit could hear your complaints, so you mutter an apology to the pile, just in case it's feeling petty today. You grind, the mano's weight making your wrists throb. A stray kernel pops free, skittering toward the ledge's edge, and you lunge to catch it, heart lurching as you glimpse the canyon below. "Nice one," your cousin calls, smirking from her own medit. You shoot back that her cornmeal looks like gravel, and she laughs, tossing a pebble at you. The banter helps, but the work's relentless. Hours of this will turn your arms to jelly. The desert's heat presses in, and a fly lands on your neck, mocking your attempts to swat it. You're tempted to fling the mano at it, but you'd rather not explain to your mother why you've weaponized breakfast prep. Historians still argue whether these cliff dwellings were built to escape violence or to hoard scarce resources like water and corn during droughts. The absence of weapons leans toward the latter, but the defensive wall you'll guard later suggests otherwise. You pause, wiping sweat with your tunic's hem, and glance at the village. Smoke curls from a kiva, and a woman balances a water pot on her head, navigating the ledge with infuriating grace. Your pile's shrinking, but the basket of ground meal's barely half full. You're not just feeding your family. Extra meal goes to communal stores, a hedge against the lean times that haunt every drought. You joke to your cousin that you're grinding enough to feed the canyon spirits, but your voice falters. Spirits are not, hunger's real, and the sun's climbing higher. The ledge is alive with work. Women weave cotton, men stack sandstone, and a dog naps in the shade, oblivious to the drop. Your hands blister, the mano's rough surface biting into your palms. You remember your mother's trick. Smear a bit of cactus sap on your hands to toughen the skin. It stings, but it works, and you're not about to whine in front of your cousin, who's now humming like she's enjoying this torture. The canyon's quiet, save for the wind's low moan and the grind of stone on stone. It's beautiful, in a merciless way, but beauty doesn't ease the ache in your shoulders. Or the gnawing worry that the next drought could empty your stores. You keep grinding, the corn dust coating your fingers like a second skin, and brace for the long hours ahead. You set down the mano, your arms throbbing like they've been wrestling a boulder, and wipe corn dust from your hands. The sun's higher now, baking the canyon's red walls, but you're not done with the day's grind. It's your turn to stand watch at the village's defensive wall, a massive stone barrier guarding the only way into this cliffside stronghold. You grab a woven mat to sit on and shuffle along the ledge, the 400-foot drop to the canyon floor a constant shadow at your side. The wall's just ahead, a choke point where the path narrows, flanked by a huge fallen boulder and a heavy sandstone door. One way in, one way out. If trouble comes, this is where you stop it, or at least try not to trip over your own sandals in a panic. The wall's stones are stacked tight, no mortar, just the ancestral Puebloans' knack for fitting rock like a puzzle. You settle onto the mat, squinting across the canyon for any sign of movement. Raiders, rival tribes, or just a nosy javelina. The village, perched under the overhang, is hidden from most angles, a secret carved into the cliff around 1250 CE. Archaeological surveys show these cliff dwellings, dated by tree ring cores, were built during a time of severe droughts, when resources like water and corn were worth fighting for. You grip a wooden staff, more for show than combat, and hope it stays quiet. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed canyon winds carried spirits' warnings, so you tilt your ear, half expecting a ghostly whisper to spill the beans on incoming trouble. You scan the horizon, the canyon's maze of red and gold blurring in the heat. A hawk circles lazily, its shadow flicking across the rock, and you joke to yourself that it's the only one patrolling properly. The ledge behind you hums with village life. Women grind corn, kids giggle, and the clack of a loom echoes off the walls. Your cousin strolls by, hauling a basket of cotton, and smirks. "Don't fall asleep, hero." You retort that her weaving looks like a dog's breakfast, but her laugh fades as she disappears around the bend. The wall's peepholes let you peek at the path below, where the sandstone ramp drops into shadow. It's defensible, sure, but one guy with a stick against a determined band? You're not exactly feeling like a canyon Rambo. Historians still argue whether this village's defenses were built to fend off violent tribes or to scare off desperate neighbors eyeing your spring. The lack of weapons suggests minimal conflict, but this wall screams preparation. You shift on the mat, your tunic sticking to your sweaty back. A lizard skitters across the boulder, pausing to stare like it's judging your vigilance. You toss a pebble at it, muttering about needing a better union for cliff guards. The village's spring, hidden in its alcove, is the real treasure here. Without it, these 40 structures would be unlivable. You remember hauling water this morning, your heart pounding on that narrow ledge, and shudder. Guarding the walls easier, but the stakes are higher. One mistake, and you're letting down everyone who's grinding corn or weaving nets back there. The sun creeps higher, and a gust of wind carries dust into your eyes. You blink it away, scanning the canyon again. Nothing moves, but the silence feels heavy, like the desert's holding its breath. Your staff's smooth from years of nervous gripping, and you trace its knots, wondering about the hands that carved it. The village is a fortress, but it's also a trap. If enemies breach the wall, there's nowhere to run. You joke to yourself that you'd rather negotiate with a raider than face your mother's wrath if you fail. The canyon's beauty is stark, but it's no comfort when you're the first line of defense. You settle in, eyes sharp, and pray the spirits, or at least that hawk, have your back. You step away from the defensive wall, your shift done, the canyon's red walls now softening in the midday light. Your staff leans against the boulder, and you flex your cramped fingers, still jittery from watching for threats that never came. The village's rhythm pulls you toward the kiva, where a ceremony to honor the ancestral spirits is about to begin. You shuffle along the ledge, the 400-foot drop a familiar menace, and duck into the kiva's low entrance, the air cool and heavy with the scent of burning sage. The chamber's dim, lit by a small hearth, and you settle onto a reed mat among a dozen villagers, their faces shadowed but solemn. You're here to pray to Inanna and the spirits, hoping they'll keep the droughts at bay and the spring flowing, but you're also dodging the priest's side-eye for your dusty tunic. The kiva's walls, smoothed with mud plaster, curve around you, etched with faint spirals that dance in the firelight. A shaman, her hair streaked with gray, chants softly, her voice rising like the canyon wind. She sprinkles cornmeal into the hearth, the flames crackling as the offering burns. Kivas were central to ancestral Puebloan spiritual life, with archaeological evidence showing they hosted rituals tying communities to their land and ancestors. You bow your head, whispering prayers for rain, your voice blending with the others. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed spirits lingered in kiva smoke, so you squint at the swirling haze, half expecting a ghostly face to give you a thumbs up. You chuckle under your breath, earning a glare from your cousin, who's trying to look pious. The shaman passes a clay bowl of bitter herb tea, and you sip, wincing at the taste, like dirt with ambition. It's meant to purify, but you're pretty sure it's just punishing your taste buds. You joke to yourself that the spirits must have a grudge against flavor. The ceremony's slow, deliberate, with pauses for silence that feel heavy, like the canyon itself is listening. You shift on the mat, your legs numb, and notice a kid fidgeting, clearly plotting an escape. You sympathize. Sitting still while the shaman drones on is tougher than guarding the wall. But this is no optional church service. Skipping it would mark you as the village slacker, and your mother's lectures are scarier than any spirit. Historians still argue whether these cliffside kivas were used year-round or only during crises, given the village's temporary feel. The elaborate plasterwork suggests deep spiritual investment, but the small storage spaces hint at short stays. The shaman raises a condor bone flute, its haunting notes echoing off the walls, and you close your eyes, picturing the cornfields you pray will grow again. The kiva's gloom wraps around you, and for a moment you feel connected to something bigger. Ancestors, gods, maybe that spring spirit you half joked about this morning. A stray spark lands on your tunic, and you brush it off, muttering about needing a fire-resistant wardrobe. Your cousin nudges you, whispering to focus, but you're already drifting, caught between reverence and the ache in your knees. The ceremony ends with a final chant, and you file out, blinking in the sunlight. The ledge feels wider after the kiva's confines, but the canyon's drop is still there, waiting to remind you of your place. Villagers disperse, women to their medits, men to repair walls. You're due to weave nets soon, but your stomach's growling, and the memory of that corn mush breakfast feels like a distant dream. You joke to yourself that the spirits owe you a feast for sitting through that tea. The village hums, the clack of grinding stones mixing with kids' laughter. You take a deep breath, the sage's scent lingering, and head toward your next task, the canyon's stark beauty both a comfort and a warning as you move forward. You leave the kiva's smoky gloom behind, the shaman's chant still echoing in your head as you step onto the village's wide ledge, the canyon's red walls glowing in the late afternoon sun. Your next task is weaving cotton nets, a job that's as crucial as it is finger-numbing. You settle into a cramped stone room, its walls blackened by years of firelight, and grab a pile of cotton fibers from a woven basket. The air's warm, tinged with the scent of dust and juniper, and you're already dreading the hours of repetitive work ahead. Firelight flickers from a small hearth, casting shadows that dance across the rough sandstone ceiling. You're not crafting for fun. These nets are vital for trading with coastal tribes, and in this cliffside village, trade means survival. You sit cross-legged on a reed mat, your back against the cool wall, and start twisting the cotton into thin cords, your fingers moving with practiced ease. The fibers are rough, snagging your calluses, and you wince as a splintery strand digs into your thumb. Cotton was a cornerstone of ancestral Puebloan trade, with archaeological evidence showing it was spun into nets and textiles exchanged for fish and shells from distant communities. You loop the cords over a wooden frame, knotting them into a mesh that's sturdy enough to haul goods. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believe the act of weaving bound the weaver's spirit to the net, so you mutter a quick prayer to keep your soul from getting tangled in this mess. Your cousin passing by laughs and says your net looks like a drunk spider's work. You keep weaving, the fire's crackle a steady companion. The room's tiny, barely big enough for you and the basket, and the low ceiling forces you to hunch, your neck protesting. You joke to yourself that you're one bad knot away from quitting to become a canyon hermit, less weaving, more napping. The village outside hums, women grind corn, men stack sandstone, and kids scamper along the ledge, oblivious to the 400-foot drop. You envy their freedom, but these nets will trade for food to get through the next drought. Your fingers ache, the cotton leaving red welts, and you pause to shake out your hands, wishing for a medieval coffee break. No such luck. The sun's dipping, and you've got hours to go. Historians still argue whether this village's trade networks collapsed due to drought or conflict, with some suggesting rival tribes disrupted coastal exchanges. The absence of foreign goods here leans toward isolation, but the cotton piles hint at hope for commerce. You glance at the hearth, its embers glowing like the promise of a meal, and remember this morning's corn mush, gritty and forgettable. A stray spark lands on your tunic, and you swat it away, muttering about needing a fire marshal in this tinderbox. Your cousin pokes her head in, offering a sip of water from a clay pot, and you take it gratefully, the cool liquid a brief relief. She teases you about your slow progress, and you retort that her cooking's slower than a sleepy tortoise. The net's taking shape, its mesh tight enough to hold fish or carry trade goods. You think of the spring you hauled water from, its trickle, a lifeline that makes this village possible. The firelight dims, and you toss in a juniper twig, the flames flaring briefly. The canyon's quiet now, save for the wind's low moan and the distant clack of a medet. You're tired, your fingers raw, but there's a strange pride in the growing net. It's your small defiance against the desert's harshness. You joke to yourself that if the spirits are watching, they'd better appreciate your knot-tying skills. The day's slipping away, and lunch is calling, but you keep weaving. The fire's glow a reminder that in this extreme village, every task is a thread in the fragile web of survival. You set aside the half-finished cotton net, your fingers stinging from hours of twisting rough fibers, and stretch your cramped hands, wincing as your joints pop like dry twigs. The canyon's afternoon heat has softened, the sun dipping behind the red rock walls, casting long shadows across the village's ledge. You're starving, the morning's corn mush a distant memory, and it's time for lunch. You shuffle to a dilapidated stone structure, its walls crumbling like a sandcastle after a storm, and settle onto a woven mat near a small hearth. The air smells of dust, smoke, and the faint tang of dried fish, your meal for the day. You grab a clay plate, chipped but sturdy, and scoop a portion of fish flakes mixed with crumbled cornmeal. It's not a gourmet spread, think gas station jerky meets stale cornbread, but in this cliffside village, it's what keeps you going. The structure's roof is half gone, letting in slants of sunlight that highlight the swirling dust motes. You're not alone. Your cousin joins you, plopping down with her own plate, and a stray dog noses around, hoping for scraps. The village, built around 1250 CE, was a temporary refuge during the Southwest's brutal droughts, as archaeological evidence like sparse storage cysts suggests. You chew the fish, its salty grit sticking to your teeth, and swat a fly that's decided your lunch is its personal buffet. You joke to yourself that the fly's got better table manners than your brother, who's probably off tossing juniper berries at kids. Your cousin grins, catching your eye, and you both laugh, though the sound's swallowed by the canyon's vastness. The meal's meager, and you ration each bite, knowing food's tight with the drought choking the land. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed eating fish strengthened your bond with water spirits, so you mumble a half-hearted thanks to the spring's guardian, hoping it's listening. The hearth's embers glow weakly, and you toss in a twig, the flames flaring just enough to keep the chill at bay. You glance at the crumbling walls, their sandstone blocks loose from years of wind and neglect. This place feels like it's holding on by sheer stubbornness, much like you after a day of grinding corn and weaving nets. You joke to your cousin that the walls are lazier than the dog, who's now napping in a sunbeam. Historians still argue whether this village's decline was due to climate change or social collapse, with some pointing to deforestation as a key factor in resource scarcity. The lack of large game bones here supports the idea of overhunting, but the spring's presence kept hope alive. You finish your fish, licking the plate clean. Waste's not an option when every calorie counts. A fly lands on your arm, and you swat it, muttering about needing a canyon-sized bug zapper. Your cousin teases you for eating like a starving coyote, and you retort that her cooking's why the dog's hiding. The banter's a small comfort, but your stomach's still rumbling, and the thought of hauling water next makes you groan. Outside, the village hums. Women weave, men repair walls, and kids scamper along the ledge, their laughter bouncing off the overhang. You stand, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and step onto the ledge, the 400-foot drop a familiar threat. The canyon's beauty is stark, its red and gold walls glowing in the fading light, but it's a beauty that demands everything from you. You remember guarding the wall earlier, your heart pounding at every rustle, and the kiva's chants, heavy with prayers for rain. Lunch is over, but the day's work isn't. You've got water to fetch, and the spring's narrow path is calling. You grab a clay pot, its weight already familiar, and head out, the canyon's wind whispering as you brace for the next task. You hoist the clay pot onto your shoulder, its familiar weight digging into your already sore muscles. You step onto the narrow ledge that snakes through the cliffside village. The canyon's afternoon light bathes the red rock walls in a warm glow, but the 400-foot drop beside you keeps your focus sharp. You're headed back to the hidden spring, the village's lifeline, to fetch water for the evening. The path is treacherous, a slim ribbon of sandstone barely wide enough for your sandals, and every step feels like a negotiation with gravity. The air's dry, scratching your throat, and the faint scent of sagebrush mixes with the dust kicked up by your feet. You're not just carrying water, you're carrying survival. One clumsy move could send you and the pot plummeting into the canyon's jaws. The ledge winds past crumbling stone structures, their walls etched with wind and time. You pass a neighbor, her own pot balanced with infuriating ease, and nod, too focused to chat. The spring's alcove is close, tucked under the overhang where the cliff weeps a slow trickle into a shallow pothole. You kneel, steadying the pot as you dip it into the cool, mineral-tinged water, careful not to stir up sediment. Water was the ancestral Puebloans' most precious resource, with archaeological evidence showing sophisticated irrigation systems in less extreme settlements. Though here, this seep was all you had. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed water carried the voices of ancestors, so you whisper a quick thanks to the spring, half joking that you don't want your great-uncle's ghost scolding you for sloppy pouring. You fill the pot, its weight doubling, and stand, your knees protesting. The trek back is harder, the ledge seeming narrower with the pot's bulk. You press against the cliff, heart thudding as a pebble skitters over the edge, vanishing into the void. You joke to yourself that if you fall, at least you'll make a splash, literally. A kid darts past, fearless, and you mutter about needing their reckless energy. The village's 40 structures come into view, hugging the overhang like stubborn survivors. Your cousin waves from her medet, grinding corn, and you grin, though the pot's weight makes you regret it. You're sweating now, the sun's heat lingering even as it dips, and a fly buzzes around your face, clearly auditioning for your personal nemesis. Historians still argue whether this village's extreme location was chosen for its defensible spring, or as a desperate retreat from social chaos. The presence of the seep supports the former, but the sparse artifacts suggest a temporary stay. You reach the wider ledge, setting the pot down with a groan, your shoulders screaming like they've been hauling boulders. A dog yips, chasing a kid who's tossing juniper berries, and you envy their carefree vibe. You remember weaving nets earlier, your fingers raw, and the kiva's chants, heavy with hope for rain. Water scarce, and every drop in this pot is a small defiance against the drought that's gripped the Southwest for decades. You joke to your mother, who's weaving nearby, that you deserve a medal for not dropping the pot. She rolls her eyes, saying you'd trip over a shadow. The village hums. Women carry baskets, men stack sandstone, and the clack of grinding stones fills the air. You take a sip from the pot, the water cool but gritty, and wipe your brow. The canyon's stark beauty, both a comfort and a threat. The spring's trickle is your lifeline, but hauling it daily on this death-defying ledge makes you wonder if the spirits could have picked a flatter spot. You glance at the defensive wall you guarded earlier, its peepholes staring blankly across the canyon. The day's slipping away, and repairs to the village's defenses are next. You grab the pot, ready to stash it, and brace for the next task. The canyon's wind whispering as you move forward, one careful step at a time. You stash the water pot in your stone nook, its cool weight a small victory against the desert's relentless thirst, and wipe the sweat from your brow. The canyon's light is fading, the red rock walls now streaked with purple shadows as the sun sinks. Your next task is repairing the village's defensive wall, a critical barrier that guards this cliffside outpost from whatever threats lurk beyond the horizon. You grab a woven basket and head to the ledge's edge, where a pile of sandstone slabs waits, their surfaces rough under your calloused hands. The 400-foot drop looms beside you, a silent reminder that one clumsy move could end your day, and you, faster than a bad batch of corn mush. The air's cooling, but the dust still clings to your tunic, and the faint howl of canyon wind carries a hint of juniper. You kneel beside the wall, its stones stacked with the precision of ancestral Puebloan builders who knew a single gap could mean disaster. The wall's choke point, flanked by a massive fallen boulder, is the village's only entrance, and you're here to reinforce it before night falls. You lift a sandstone slab, its weight making your arms tremble, and fit it into a crumbling section, nudging it until it locks tight. Archaeological evidence shows these cliff dwellings, built around 1250 CE, were designed for defense, with narrow ledges and stone doors that could seal off invaders. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed stacking stones with care pleased the earth spirits. So you mutter a quick apology to the rock, half joking that you don't want a grumpy boulder ghost haunting your sleep. You work steadily, the clack of stone on stone blending with the village's hum, women weaving, kids laughing, and the distant grind of a metate. Your cousin strolls by, hauling a basket of corn, and smirks. "Building a castle, are you?" You retort that her weaving's more tangled than a coyote's dreams, and she laughs, tossing a pebble that narrowly misses your head. The banter keeps you going, but the work's brutal. Your back aches from lifting, and a sharp edge slices your finger, drawing a bead of blood. You wrap it in a scrap of cotton, muttering about needing a medieval first aid kit. The wall's taking shape, but every stone feels heavier, and you're starting to think the canyon's mocking your stamina. Historians still argue whether these defenses were built to repel rival tribes or to deter desperate neighbors coveting your spring. The lack of weapons suggests minimal violence, but this wall's heft screams caution. You pause, catching your breath, and glance at the canyon, its vastness both beautiful and unforgiving. A hawk circles above, its cry sharp against the wind. You joke to yourself that it's the only one getting a break today. You remember hauling water earlier, your heart pounding on that narrow ledge, and the kiva's chants, heavy with prayers for rain. The village's 40 structures hug the overhang, their blackened walls a testament to years of hearth fires. You stack another stone, your hands raw, and feel a quiet pride. This wall isn't just rock, it's the village's shield. The ledge is quieter now, the village settling as dusk creeps in. A kid scampers past, dodging the drop like it's a game, and you shake your head, wondering how they're not terrified. Your mother calls from her weaving, reminding you to finish before dark. Raiders, if they come, prefer the cover of night. You joke to her that you're building faster than the gods made the canyon, but your voice is tired. The wall's stronger now, but the fear of what's out there lingers, a shadow as real as the drop beside you. You place one last stone, the fit perfect, and step back, dusting your hands. The day's fading, and stories by firelight are next, but the canyon's whispers keep you on edge. You dust the sandstone grit from your hands, the defensive wall now a bit sturdier thanks to your efforts, and step onto the village's wide ledge as dusk settles over the canyon. The red rock walls glow faintly, kissed by the last slivers of sunlight, and the air carries a cool bite, scented with juniper and dust. Your arms ache from stacking stones, but the day's not done. You're joining neighbors to trade stories under the overhang, a ritual as vital as water or corn in this cliffside village. You grab a woven blanket, threadbare but warm, and settle near a small hearth where a dozen villagers gather, their faces softened by firelight. The 400-foot drop looms just beyond the ledge, but the flicker of flames and the hum of voices make it feel, for a moment, like the canyon's holding its breath to listen. You sit cross-legged, the ground hard beneath your mat, and pass around a clay bowl of roasted corn kernels, crunchy but bland. The stories start, tales of ancestors, spirits, and the desert's tricks, each voice weaving a thread in the village's tapestry. Your cousin spins a yarn about a coyote who stole the moon, and you chuckle, joking that it explains why your lunch keeps disappearing. The ancestral Puebloans relied on oral traditions, with archaeological evidence like kiva carvings suggesting storytelling strengthened community bonds during the 13th century droughts. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed stars were the eyes of ancestors, so you glance up, half expecting a celestial nod for your wall work earlier. The night sky's a blanket of pinpricks, and you wonder if they're approving or just judging your knot-tying skills from the nets you wove. An elder speaks next, her voice low, recounting how the village's spring was found, a gift from the earth after a shaman's vision. You lean in, the fire's warmth chasing the chill from your shoulders, but a gust of canyon wind sends sparks flying, and you swat one off your tunic, muttering about needing a spark-proof life. Your cousin whispers that the elder's stories are half made up, and you retort that her cooking's half-baked, earning a playful shove. The stories shift to warnings: raiders who vanish into the canyon, spirits who haunt the ledge, so you pull your blanket tighter, the drop's shadow feeling closer now. Historians still argue whether this village's isolation was to evade violent tribes or to protect resources like the spring, with sparse artifacts fueling the debate over permanent versus seasonal use. The hearth's embers glow, and you toss in a juniper twig, the flames flaring briefly. A kid yawns, curled against his mother, and you envy his drift towards sleep. Your day's been grinding corn, hauling water, and stacking stones, and your body's screaming for rest. You joke to the group that the canyon spirits owe you a nap, but the elder's sharp glance shuts you up. The village is quiet, save for the wind's soft moan and the distant clack of a loom. You remember guarding the wall, your heart pounding at every rustle, and the kiva's chants heavy with hope. The stories wind down, and you stand, stretching your aching back, the canyon's vastness both a comfort and a threat. Sleep's calling, but the ledge's dangers linger, and you brace for a night of uneasy dreams. You shuffle away from the hearth's fading glow, the elder's stories of coyotes and spirits still swirling in your mind, and head toward your stone nook in the cliffside village. The canyon's night has settled in, the red rock walls now cloaked in shadow, and a sharp chill bites through your cotton tunic. You're bone-tired from grinding corn, hauling water, and stacking stones, but sleep in this extreme outpost is no cozy retreat. You duck into your cramped room, the air thick with the scent of old smoke and dust, and settle onto a thin reed mat in a shallow nook carved into the cliff. The 400-foot drop just outside the village's ledge looms in your thoughts, and you're all too aware that nighttime brings its own dangers: thieves, raiders, or just a clumsy step in the dark. Your bed is a patchy layer of reeds over dirt, topped with a rabbit fur blanket that's more holes than warmth. You pull it tight, shivering as the canyon's wind sneaks through the tattered cotton curtain that serves as your door. The village, built around 1250 CE, was designed for defense, with archaeological evidence like the single choke point entrance showing the ancestral Puebloans' focus on security. You lie still, ears straining for sounds beyond the village's hum: a dog's yip, the clack of a loom, or the dreaded crunch of footsteps on the ledge. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed sleeping with a stone amulet warded off night spirits, so you clutch a smooth pebble under your mat, half joking that it's your only defense against canyon ghosts. The room's walls, blackened by years of hearth fires, feel like they're closing in, and the low ceiling forces you to curl up tight. You joke to yourself that this nook's cozier than a coyote's den, but the thought of raiders keeps you from drifting off. Your cousin's snoring in the next nook doesn't help, loud enough to wake the ancestors you prayed to in the kiva earlier. You mutter about needing earplugs, a luxury about 700 years away. The village is quiet, but the wind's howl carries whispers of trouble. Thieves could slip past the defensive wall you reinforced, eyeing the spring or your meager corn stores. You shift, the reeds crunching under you, and try to focus on the firelight's faint flicker through the curtain. Historians still argue whether this village's extreme location was a response to violent tribes or a desperate bid to control scarce water during droughts, with the lack of weapons tilting toward the latter. The sparse artifacts here suggest temporary use, but the kiva's plasterwork hints at deeper roots. You close your eyes, but sleep's elusive. Every creak of the ledge or rustle in the canyon jolts you awake. You remember hauling water on that death-defying path, your heart pounding, and the stories of raiders that chilled the group tonight. You joke to yourself that if thieves come, you'll just throw your cousins snoring at them, more effective than any staff. The blanket's thin and the cold seeps through, making you long for the hearth's warmth you left behind. The village feels like a fortress, but it's also a trap. One way in, no easy way out. You tuck the pebble tighter, half believing it might actually help, and try to relax. The canyon's silence is heavy, broken only by the wind's moan and a distant owl's cry. You're exhausted, your body aching from the day's labor, but the fear of what's out there keeps your mind racing. Sleep, when it comes, will be light, fragmented, a fragile escape from a world that demands everything. You drift, the nook's hard embrace a stark reminder of your precarious life, and brace for whatever the night might bring. You stir from a fitful doze in your stone nook, the canyon's chill seeping through your rabbit fur blanket, and wince as you shift, your ankles throbbing twisted yesterday while hauling water on that cursed ledge. The village is hushed, the pre-dawn darkness wrapping the cliffside in a heavy silence, broken only by the faint moan of wind and your cousin's snoring, still rattling like a loose rock. You need relief, so you limp out, grabbing a yucca fiber sandal to protect your good foot, and head to the shaman's nook, a small chamber tucked under the overhang. The 400-foot drop looms just beyond the ledge, but you're too sore to care about vertigo. You want that ankle fixed before grinding corn turns into a full-blown ordeal. The shaman's nook is dim, lit by a flickering oil lamp that casts eerie shadows on the sandstone walls. The air smells of sage, bitter herbs, and something faintly like burnt corn, and you duck under the low ceiling, your ankle protesting with every step. The shaman, an elder with eyes like polished obsidian, gestures for you to sit on a woven mat. She examines your ankle, her calloused fingers probing the swelling, and you grit your teeth, joking to yourself that she's probably plotting to make you limp worse for skipping her last ceremony. Ancestral Puebloans used herbal remedies extensively, with archaeological evidence of sage and juniper in healing sites across the southwest, dated to around 1250 CE when this village thrived. She hands you a clay cup of tea, a murky brew of ground herbs that smells like a mix of dirt and regret. You sip, gagging at the bitter taste, and mutter that it's worse than the corn mush you choked down yesterday. The shaman ignores your grimace, chanting softly as she rubs a salve of crushed yucca root into your ankle. A quirky tidbit, some Puebloans believed pain was a spirit's way of demanding attention, so you half whisper an apology to your ankle, hoping it'll calm down before you embarrass yourself further. Your cousin, passing by, peeks in and snickers, saying you look like you're auditioning for village invalid. You retort that her weaving's more painful than your limp, but the shaman's glare shuts you both up. Historians still argue whether these cliff dwellings relied on resident shamans or visiting healers, with the scarcity of medicinal artifacts here suggesting the latter. The elaborate kiva you prayed in yesterday leans toward a permanent spiritual presence, though. The salve stings, but the pain eases, and you feel a grudging respect for the shaman's skill. She wraps your ankle in a strip of cotton, tight but not cruel, and you joke to yourself that it's the fanciest bandage this side of the canyon. The The tea's kicking in, leaving you woozy, and you lean against the wall, the lamp's flicker hypnotizing. You remember guarding the wall, your heart pounding at every rustle, and the stories of raiders that chilled the night. The shaman's chant fades, and you stand, testing your ankle. Better, but not perfect. You limp back to the ledge, the village stirring as dawn tints the canyon's red walls. Women haul water, men stack stones, and kids dart past, dodging the drop like it's a game. The shaman's tea lingers on your tongue, bitter as the drought that's gripped this land for decades. You joke to your mother, weaving nearby, that the shaman's brew could wake the dead. She rolls her eyes, saying you'd complain about a feast. The canyon's beauty is stark, but it's no comfort when your ankle's still tender and the day's work looms. You brace for the festival tonight, hoping your limp doesn't make you the village's worst dancer. The wind whispers, and you head to your nook, the cliff's shadow a reminder of the fragile life you're clinging to. You hobble from the shaman's nook, your ankle still tender but steadier thanks to her bitter tea and yucca salve, and make your way along the village's wide ledge as the canyon's evening light paints the red rock walls in hues of fire and shadow. The air's cool, scented with juniper and the faint smoke of hearths, and the village is buzzing with preparations for a festival to honor the harvest spirits. You're swept into the chaos, joining neighbors under the overhang, where laughter and music spill out like a rare desert bloom. The 400-foot drop looms just beyond, but tonight the cliffside feels alive, the threat of raiders or drought pushed aside by the promise of dance and feasting. You grab a clay bowl ready to eat dates and dodge drunk priests, your limp making you pray you don't trip mid-celebration. The festival's heart is the main plaza, a sunken court where villagers crowd, their cotton tunics glowing in the firelight. A condor bone flute wails, its notes sharp against the thump of deer-hide drums, and you weave through the throng, dodging kids who dart like reckless coyotes. Women pass bowls of dried dates and corn cakes, sweet but gritty, and you scoop a handful, the sticky fruit a rare treat. Ancestral Puebloan festivals, evidenced by Kiva artifacts dated to around 1250 CE, were vital for community cohesion during the Southwest's harsh droughts. A quirky tidbit: some Puebloans believed dancing pleased the rain spirits, so you shuffle awkwardly, joking to yourself that your limp's probably summoning a sandstorm instead. You munch a date, dodging a priest who's swaying from too much fermented corn drink, his chants slurring into nonsense. You mutter that he's preaching to the canyon spirits, who are likely unimpressed. Your cousin grabs your arm, pulling you into a dance circle, and you protest, blaming your ankle, but she laughs, saying you're slower than a sleeping tortoise. You join in, your steps clumsy but earnest, the drums beat pulsing through the crowd. The plaza's alive, men clap, women spin, and kids toss juniper berries, one narrowly missing your eye. You joke to your cousin that the spirits owe you a new ankle for this effort, but the music drowns you out, the flute's wail lifting the village's hopes skyward. Historians still argue whether these festivals were desperate pleas for rain or celebrations of survival, with the sparse storage here suggesting the former. The Kiva's intricate plasterwork you saw earlier hints at deep spiritual roots, though. You pause, catching your breath, and grab another corn cake, its texture like chewing a dusty rug. A drunk priest stumbles by, offering a sloshy blessing, and you sidestep, joking to yourself that his breath could start a fire without a spark. The crowd thins as the night deepens, and you lean against a stone wall, the canyon's vastness stretching below. You remember hauling water, your heart pounding on that ledge, and the shaman's tea, bitter but effective. The festival's joy is a fragile shield against the desert's threats, but it's enough for now. The drums slow, and you slip away, your ankle aching, but your spirit lighter. The ledge is quiet, save for the wind's soft moan and a dog's distant yip. The village's 40 structures huddle under the overhang, their blackened walls glowing faintly in the firelight. You're exhausted, the day's labor, grinding corn, weaving nets, stacking stones, catching up with you. Sleep's calling, but the festival's energy lingers, a reminder that even in this extreme outpost, life finds a way to dance. You head to your nook, the canyon's beauty stark and unyielding, and brace for a night of uneasy rest, hoping the spirits, or at least the drums, keep the raiders at bay. You slip away from the festival's fading drums, your ankles still tender but buoyed by the rare joy of dates and dancing, and shuffle along the village's ledge toward your stone nook. The canyon's night is deep now, the red rock walls swallowed by shadow, and a crisp wind carries the scent of juniper and cooling stone. You're exhausted. Grinding corn, hauling water, weaving nets, and stacking stones have left your body aching like it's been dragged across the desert. Sleep's your only escape, but in this cliffside village perched 400 feet above the canyon floor, rest is as precarious as the ledge you tread. You duck into your nook, the air thick with dust and the faint char of old hearth fires, and collapse onto your reed mat, pulling a tattered rabbit fur blanket over you. The stars glitter through the curtained doorway, lulling you into uneasy dreams. Your nook's walls, blackened by years of smoke, feel like a cocoon, though the hard dirt floor and crunchy reeds are no luxury sweet. You curl up, the blanket's holes letting in the chill, and clutch that smooth pebble you've kept since last night, half believing it wards off canyon spirits. The village, built around 1250 CE, was a desperate refuge during the Southwest's brutal droughts, with tree ring dating pinning its beams to a time when survival meant clinging to springs like the one you hauled water from. A quirky tidbit, some Puebloans thought dreams carried messages from ancestors, so you close your eyes, joking to yourself that your great-uncle might show up to lecture you on net weaving. The thought makes you smile, but the canyon's silence, broken only by the wind's low moan, keeps you on edge. You shift, the reeds crackling, and try to ignore your cousin's snoring, loud enough to scare off raiders. Sleep's elusive. Every creak of the ledge or distant owl's cry jolts you, reminding you of the thieves you feared last night. You joke to yourself that if raiders come, you'll just throw your sore ankle at them, less effort than swinging a staff. The ancestral Puebloans' defensive wall, which you reinforced yesterday, was their shield, but this nook feels like a trap with only one way out. Historians still argue whether this village's extreme perch was to hide from violent tribes or to secure the spring, with sparse artifacts suggesting a temporary stay, though the Kiva's rituals hint at deeper roots. You yawn, the festival's flute still echoing in your mind, and feel the weight of the day pulling you under. The blanket's thin, but the nook's walls hold the day's lingering warmth, and you drift, the pebble a small comfort in your hand. You think of the spring's trickle, the Kiva's chants, and the stories of coyotes and stars that warmed the night. The village is quiet, its 40 structures huddled under the overhang, a testament to a people who danced despite drought. You joke to yourself that if the spirits send you a dream, they'd better include a softer mat. The canyon's vastness fades and sleep creeps in, fragile but welcome, as the stars keep watch over your fleeting rest. As you lie there, the canyon's whispers soften, the wind's howl fading into a gentle sigh that wraps around you like a lullaby. The stars above gleam softly, their light filtering through the curtain, casting faint patterns on the blackened walls. Your breath slows, each exhale blending with the village's quiet rhythm, the clack of looms and laughter now distant memories. The day's labors, corn dust on your hands, the spring's cool weight, the festival's fleeting joy, melt into the night, leaving only the steady pulse of survival. You're safe for now in this nook carved by hands long gone, held by a village that endured against all odds. The canyon cradles you, its vastness no longer a threat but a quiet promise of rest. Let the stars guide you, let the wind sing, and drift into dreams as soft as the desert's embrace, whispering peace until dawn. Hey guys, tonight we're walking the streets of Constantinople on May 29th, 1453. Its final day as a Christian city. You feel the cobblestones vibrating beneath your feet as urban's massive cannons pound the ancient walls. The air tastes of dust and fear, and somewhere in the distance, you hear prayers mixing with battle cries. Not to be a downer, but you probably won't survive this day, though I promise it'll be fascinating nonetheless. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm curious to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It creates this amazing connection across time and space. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Dawn of the final day. You wake to the distant rumble of cannons, Over the past 53 days, this sound has become as familiar as your own heartbeat, the background noise to life in a besieged city. But today, something feels different. The booming has a new urgency, a frightening rhythm that pulls you from sleep before the morning light fully breaks through your shuttered window. You rub your eyes and listen. Yes, definitely different. More focused, more determined. More terrifying, your small home near the Forum of Constantine has survived the siege so far, though not without damage. The ceiling in your sleeping quarters has a worrying crack that wasn't there last week. Like everyone else in Constantinople, your morning routine has transformed since Sultan Mehmed II and his army surrounded the city. First, you check for new damage from overnight bombardment. That crack is slightly longer, but still not catastrophic. Next, you reach for the water pitcher, measuring out your daily ration with care. The wells in your district are still producing, thank God, but who knows how long that will last. Outside your window, you notice something strange. The usual morning sounds are missing. No vendors calling out their wares, no neighbors chatting, no children playing in the narrow streets. The silence hangs heavy, broken only by the continued thunder of those massive Ottoman cannons. You dress quickly in simple clothes that have seen better days. Fashion stopped mattering when the siege began. You splash a handful of rationed water on your face and chew on a piece of hard bread. Your breakfast, identical to yesterday's and likely tomorrow's too. If there is a tomorrow, you step outside and the silence hits you even harder. The small square where your neighbors would normally gather to trade news and goods stands empty. The Forum of Constantine, usually bustling even in these difficult times, is eerily quiet. Instead of the normal market chatter, you hear only the distant cannon fire and something else. Church bells, but not in their usual pattern, not calling for prayer or marking the hours. These are warning bells, ringing in an irregular rhythm that sends a chill down your spine. You make your way toward the main street, and that's when you see them, the walls in the distance. The mighty Theodosian walls that have protected Constantinople for nearly 1,000 years, the walls that have repelled countless attacks from countless enemies. Even from this distance, you can see new damage. Fresh cracks and crumbling sections that weren't there yesterday. A small group of citizens stands nearby, pointing and speaking in hushed voices. You catch fragments of their conversation, focused attack. Breach possible, God help us all. As you walk through your neighborhood, the signs of panic become more evident. Families are boarding up windows. Some are packing small bundles, only what they can carry. You pass the home of the silversmith who has lived there for decades. He's nailing planks across his shop entrance. Today is different, he tells you without looking up from his work. The cannons are all firing at the same spot. The commander of the walls came through an hour ago. They're preparing for the worst. Historians still argue whether most citizens truly understood the gravity of their situation that final morning. Some accounts suggest a strange denial persisted until the very end. After all, Constantinople had withstood 22 sieges before this one. The city had lasted for more than a millennium. Surely it would last another day, another year, another century. But the evidence in people's actions tells a different story. They knew, even if they couldn't fully accept it. You pass the home of old Sophia, a widow who has lived in your neighborhood forever. Through her half-open door, you glimpse her carefully taking something from beneath a floorboard. A small Byzantine flag, the gold and purple still vibrant despite being hidden away. It's a quirky detail you'd almost forgotten about. Many families kept these flags concealed in their homes, ready to wave them when the siege inevitably failed, as all previous sieges had. My husband's father waved this when the Arabs retreated, she tells you, noticing your glance. And my husband waved it when the Bulgars left. Now it's my turn. Her confidence would be reassuring if her hands weren't trembling so badly. You continue toward the Lycus Valley, where your cousin's family lives closer to the threatened walls. The streets become more crowded as you approach the center of the city. People move with purpose, some toward the walls to help with defenses, others away from them, seeking the relative safety of the inner city. A monk hurries past, his face grim. They've brought up more of those devil cannons during the night, he tells anyone who will listen. all aimed at the St. Romanus Gate. Pray, brothers and sisters. Pray like never before. That's when the realization hits you. The rhythm of the cannon fire isn't random anymore. In previous weeks, the Ottoman gunners had spread their fire across different sections of the wall, testing for weaknesses. Now they've found one. Every shot, every massive stone ball hurled from Urban's monstrous cannons is hitting the same section. You remember hearing about the Hungarian engineer Urban, who had first offered his services to Constantinople, but, finding the city too poor to pay him, turned to the Ottomans instead. Now his cannons might be the death of the very city he had once hoped would employ him. History is full of such ironies, though they're cold comfort when your world is crumbling. The ground trembles beneath your feet with each impact. People stumble as they walk. A woman carrying a jug of water loses her balance as a particularly powerful blast shakes the street. The jug shatters, and she doesn't even stop to mourn the loss of the precious liquid. Everyone knows water will be the least of their concerns if the walls fall today. As you get closer to the Lycus Valley, the crowds thicken. Military men rush past, armor clanking, expressions tense. Civilians carry bundles of supplies toward the walls, food for the defenders, bandages for the wounded, materials to repair breaches. Everyone has seen the damage, and everyone knows what it means. The walls have never looked so vulnerable. A man on horseback, clearly a messenger by his dress, gallops past, heading toward the imperial palace. His face is streaked with sweat and dirt, and there's blood on his sleeve. The news he carries can't be good. You overhear a soldier telling a group of citizens that Emperor Constantine himself has been at the walls since before dawn, moving among the defenders, rallying their spirits. You hurry your pace, worried now about your relatives. The cannon fire intensifies and smoke rises from the direction of the St. Romanus Gate. People are flowing away from that area now, many carrying small bundles of possessions, children clutched tightly by the hand. Their expressions tell you everything you need to know. The situation at the walls is deteriorating rapidly. The day has only just begun, but already it feels like the longest day of your life. And deep in your stomach, a knot of fear tightens with each cannon blast, each tremor beneath your feet, each face of panic you pass in the street. Constantinople has stood for 1,000 years, the greatest city in Christendom, the last remnant of the Roman Empire. But today, this ordinary Tuesday in May, you can't shake the feeling that you're witnessing its final hours, and somehow you need to find a way to survive them. The walls begin to crumble. You make your way up a small hill near the Blachernay Palace, drawn like dozens of others to get a better view of what's happening at the walls. The sight that greets you forces the breath from your lungs. Generations of Constantinopolitans have lived with an unshakable certainty. The Theodosian walls cannot fall. Yet there before your eyes, the unthinkable is happening. Actual breaches are forming in the legendary fortifications that have protected your city for nearly 1,000 years. The triple walls stretch across the land approaches to Constantinople, running 6.5 kilometers from the Sea of Marmara to the Golden Horn. They've withstood everything enemies have thrown at them since they were built in the 5th century until now. You've grown up hearing stories about these walls, how they've kept the city safe through countless sieges. Your grandfather used to point to them with pride, telling you that as long as these walls stood, Constantinople would never fall. You wonder what he would say if he could see them now. Urban's cannons focus on the northwest section near the St. Romanus Gate. Each blast sends chunks of 1,000-year-old stonework flying into the air. The sound is like nothing you've ever heard before, not just the boom of the cannon firing, but the terrible cracking and crumbling of ancient stone giving way. It's as if the very foundations of your world are being torn apart, and in a way they are. They've been at it since dawn, says an old soldier standing nearby. He doesn't take his eyes off the walls as he speaks. Each shot hits the same spot. They're not testing for weaknesses anymore. They know exactly where to hit us. They carry stones, mortar, and wooden beams, materials to repair what the Ottoman cannons have destroyed. It's been the pattern for weeks. The Ottomans destroy sections of wall during the day, and the defenders desperately repair them overnight. But the balance is shifting. Each day the damage grows worse. Each night, the repairs grow more inadequate. It's a losing battle of stones against gunpowder, of ancient defensive technology against modern destructive power. The defenders have their own cannons, of course. You can see them positioned along the walls, their bronze barrels gleaming in the morning sun. But compared to Mehmed's monsters, they look like children's toys. One Ottoman gun in particular draws your eye, a behemoth among weapons. You've heard about this one. Urban's masterpiece is 9 meters long and fires stone balls weighing 500 kilograms. The defenders call it the Basilica, and its power has become legendary even in the short time it's been in use. A man in a merchant's clothing stands nearby, offering commentary to anyone who will listen. "Those big cannons can only fire 7 times a day, you know," he says with the air of someone sharing valuable insider knowledge. "The barrels get too hot. They pour olive oil inside to cool them between shots. I traded with a gunner before the siege. That's how I know." You're not sure whether to believe this quirky tidbit, but it offers a sliver of hope. 7 shots a day means the destruction has limits, at least. The crowd around you grows as more citizens climb the hill for a better view. Conversations blend into a nervous murmur, punctuated by gasps when a particularly large piece of wall crumbles away. Historians still argue whether Constantinople could have withstood the siege if Emperor Constantine V had accepted Western military aid at the cost of religious compromise. The Pope had offered help, but it would have meant submitting the Orthodox Church to Roman authority, something many citizens, particularly the powerful monks and priests, found unthinkable. Now, watching the walls fall piece by piece, you wonder if religious pride was worth the price. "They need help at the St. Romanus Gate," a young man shouts as he runs past. "Anyone who can carry a bucket, they need you now." The crowd stirs and many begin moving in that direction, yourself included. You've never considered yourself particularly brave or patriotic, but something pulls you toward the damaged walls. Perhaps it's the simple human instinct to protect your home. Perhaps it's the knowledge that if the walls fail, nothing else will matter. You join a line of civilians passing buckets of water to douse fires started by flaming arrows, while others carry debris away from repair sites. The line stretches from a nearby cistern all the way to the damaged section of wall. Men, women, even older children stand shoulder to shoulder, passing buckets from hand to hand. A woman next to you has bandaged hands, blistered from hours of this work, but she doesn't stop. Nobody does. Everyone knows what happens if the walls fail. The Ottoman soldiers have been promised 3 days of unrestricted looting if they take the city by force. 3 days to take whatever and whoever they want. From this close, the damage to the walls looks even worse. Sections that appeared solid from a distance reveal deep cracks when seen up close. Defenders rush back and forth along the ramparts, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. Some bear wounds hastily bandaged. They look exhausted, these men who've been fighting and repairing and fighting again for nearly 2 months straight. But they don't stop either. Like the woman with the bandaged hands, they keep going because they must. You've been passing buckets for perhaps an hour when you hear it, a sound that rises above even the thunder of the cannons. A terrible cracking noise echoes across the city as a significant section near the St. Romanus Gate finally surrenders to the relentless bombardment. The outer wall collapses in a cloud of dust and debris. People scream, soldiers shout orders. For a moment, pure chaos reigns as everyone realizes what has happened. The legendary Theodosian walls, which have never fully fallen to an enemy, have been breached. The defenders recover quickly, rushing to the damaged area with shields raised. Ottoman troops surge toward the breach, but are met with fierce resistance. You drop your bucket and join those carrying stones, timbers, anything that might help build a makeshift barrier behind the breach. The defenders are following their contingency plans now, abandoning the broken outer wall to form a new line of defense at the middle wall. But that wall too shows damage, and the innermost wall has always been the weakest of the three. Through the dust and confusion, you catch glimpses of the Ottoman forces massing beyond the walls. Their numbers seem endless. For every defender on the walls, there must be 10 attackers waiting to storm through any breach. The captain of the guard shouts for more materials, more hands. "We can still hold them," he yells, but the tremor in his voice betrays his doubt. By mid-afternoon, the defenders have created a makeshift palisade behind the breach, but it's a poor substitute for the massive stone walls that stood for centuries. As you help place a heavy wooden beam, you look up at what remains of the Theodosian walls. Built by emperors, maintained by generations, they were supposed to be eternal. Now they crumble before your eyes, and with them, the last vestiges of the Roman Empire. You wipe sweat from your brow and continue working, but a cold realization has settled in your mind. Your city's fate now hangs by the thinnest of threads. The walls that have defined and protected Constantinople for a millennium can no longer save you. Whatever happens next, the city that emerges from this siege will not be the one you've known all your life. Prayers and preparations. You leave the walls with a heaviness in your chest that wasn't there this morning. Above the crowded streets, the massive dome of the Hagia Sophia rises, seeming to hover over the city as if by divine intervention. It calls to you, as it calls to thousands of others today. Where else would you go when the world is ending but to the greatest church in all of Christendom? The square before the Hagia Sophia teems with people seeking entrance. Guards manage the flow, but they don't turn anyone away. Today of all days, the church belongs to everyone. You join the stream of humanity flowing through the enormous bronze doors. The transition from bright sunshine to the church's dim interior momentarily blinds you. Then your eyes adjust, and the full majesty of the space unfolds before you. The air hangs thick with incense, the sweet smoke curling upward toward the dome that seems impossibly distant. Hundreds of oil lamps and candles cast flickering light across the vast interior, their flames reflected in the gold mosaics that cover the walls and ceiling. The effect is breathtaking, even now, especially now, when you've seen it countless times before. Priests conduct continuous services, their voices rising and falling in ancient chants that have echoed through this space for 9 centuries. You find a place to stand among the crowd. People press close on all sides, yet the church is so vast it somehow never feels truly full. A woman sobs quietly next to you. A man clutches a small wooden cross so tightly his knuckles have turned white. Everyone's eyes drift upward to the dome, to the mosaic of Christ Pantocrator, Christ the All-Ruler, looking down upon his people with an expression both stern and compassionate. A stir runs through the crowd, a ripple of movement and whispered voices. You stand on tiptoe to see what's happening. Near the main altar, a group of imperial guards creates a path through the throng. And then you see him, Emperor Constantine V's Palaiologos, the last ruler of Byzantium, entering the church. He moves slowly, acknowledging the people with slight nods but never stopping. His face appears haggard, marked by weeks of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Yet there's a resolute set to his jaw, a steadiness in his steps. The emperor takes his place, not on the elevated imperial platform where emperors usually stand during services, but among the common folk. He kneels on the stone floor, head bowed in prayer, surrounded by his subjects. The sight strikes you deeply. In all your years in Constantinople, you've never seen an emperor pray like an ordinary citizen. The message is clear. Today, all differences of rank and station fall away. Today, everyone in Constantinople faces the same fate. Your gaze wanders across the interior of the great church. Golden icons gleam in the candlelight, their painted faces seeming almost alive in the dancing light. Women weep quietly in corners. Men stare hollow-eyed at the magnificent mosaics that have watched over Constantinople through plague, fire, and endless political turmoil. These walls have witnessed emperors crowned and deposed, triumphant victories and crushing defeats. They've stood while dynasties rose and fell. Will they witness the final fall of the city they've guarded for so long? Children cluster close to their parents, unusual stillness replacing their normal restless energy. Many clutch small religious tokens, tiny wooden crosses, small icons, fragments of what are claimed to be holy relics. Parents have given them these items as protection against the coming storm that everyone can feel approaching. You wonder if the children understand what's happening, or if they're simply responding to the fear they sense in the adults around them. Near one of the side chapels, you notice something odd. A small group of people appears to be removing stones from the wall. As you draw closer, you see that they're creating a small cavity, just large enough to insert a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. One of them, an elderly merchant you recognize from the silk market, catches your curious gaze. "Family treasures," he explains in a hushed voice. "My grandfather's golden chalice, my mother's wedding jewelry. The Ottomans will take everything if they break through, but they won't tear down the Hagia Sophia. Mehmed wants it intact. We'll retrieve our treasures after." His voice trails off, unable to complete the thought. You're surprised how many others have had the same idea. Looking more carefully now, you notice small groups throughout the church doing the same thing, hiding family heirlooms within the church walls, creating secret caches they hope to return for someday. It strikes you as both desperately hopeful and profoundly sad. A debate still rages among historians whether the famous icon of the Virgin Mary, the Hodegetria, was paraded around the city walls on this final day as a last desperate spiritual defense. Some accounts claim the holy image, believed to have been painted by Saint Luke himself, was carried by priests in solemn procession, a final appeal for divine intervention. Others insist it remained within the safety of its chapel. Standing in the Hagia Sophia now, you hear contradictory rumors. Some say the procession has already happened, others that it's planned for sunset, still others that the icon has been hidden to protect it from Ottoman hands. Near the altar, a priest offers communion to a group of soldiers. These men have temporarily left their posts on the walls to receive the sacrament. They approach with helmets removed, swords still strapped to their sides. Their hands shake as they receive the bread and wine. These hardened men know better than anyone what awaits beyond the walls. For many, this will be their final communion. Tomorrow, they will be dead or enslaved. Yet after receiving the sacrament, they straighten their shoulders and return to their duties without complaint or hesitation. A hush falls over the crowd as Emperor Constantine rises. He turns to face his people, and though he speaks without shouting, his voice carries through the vast space with remarkable clarity. "Citizens of Constantinople," he begins, "for 1100 years these walls have housed the capital of the Roman Empire. I stand before you as its emperor, as was Constantine the Great who founded this city, and I tell you now, I would rather die than surrender this city." His voice remains steady, his expression calm. "Rome did not fall in a day, nor shall Constantinople. If God wills that we shall fall with honor as Christians and as Romans." There are no cheers, only quiet murmurs and a few sobbing women quickly hushed by those around them. The emperor's words are brave, but everyone in the church knows the reality. The walls are failing, the defenders are outnumbered, and despite Constantine's courage, the city stands on the brink of disaster. You leave the church feeling oddly calm. The prayers, the emperor's words, the solidarity of your fellow citizens, something has steadied you, at least temporarily. Outside, the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the square. The cannon fire continues in the distance, a persistent reminder that prayer alone won't save the city. Walking back toward your neighborhood, you see people transforming their homes into fortresses, their everyday items into weapons. Kitchen knives tied to broomsticks become improvised spears. Large pots bubble with oil being heated on street corners, not for cooking, but for pouring on attackers if they breach the inner districts. Women tear clothing into strips for bandages. Children collect stones to be thrown from rooftops. The city itself is becoming one final fortress, its people preparing for a struggle that most know they cannot win, but that none seem willing to surrender without a fight. The city holds its breath. As afternoon shadows lengthen across Constantinople, an unnatural quiet settles over the city. The Ottoman cannons, which have pounded the walls relentlessly for weeks, have suddenly stopped firing. This silence is more terrifying than the bombardment. Your ears, accustomed to the constant thunder of artillery, ring with the absence of sound. People in the streets stop and look at each other, their faces showing the same question you're thinking. What does this mean? "They're preparing," says an old soldier limping past you. His beard is gray and his face weathered by decades of campaigns. I've seen this before. When the cannons stop, the men start moving. Mehmed is positioning his troops for the final assault. He doesn't slow his pace as he speaks, heading purposefully toward the walls despite his injured leg. You notice others like him, veterans of past conflicts, all moving with grim determination toward the city's defenses. They recognize this silence for what it is, the calm before the storm. The streets buzz with rumors that spread from person to person, group to group, quarter to quarter. You hear a dozen contradicting stories in as many minutes. An old woman grabs your arm as you pass. "The Sultan has offered one last chance to surrender," she whispers urgently. "If we open the gates now, he promises no one will be harmed." Before you can respond, a merchant interrupts. "Nonsense! Venetian ships have been spotted. Reinforcements are coming at last." Neither rumor sounds particularly believable, but people cling to whatever gives them hope. You feel a need to see for yourself what's happening beyond the walls. An acquaintance's house nearby has a flat roof that offers a view over the lower buildings. You climb the narrow stairs, nodding to others who have had the same idea. The rooftop is crowded with neighbors, all staring outward with expressions ranging from curiosity to dread. From this vantage point, the full scale of your predicament becomes painfully clear. The Ottoman camps surround the city completely, stretching as far as you can see. Thousands of tents dot the landscape, and countless campfires are being lit as evening approaches. Each fire represents soldiers who will soon storm your streets. The sheer number is overwhelming. Constantinople, once a city of hundreds of thousands, now holds perhaps 50,000 defenders against an Ottoman force 3 times that size. Your gaze turns toward the harbor at the Golden Horn, once Constantinople's lifeline to the sea. Now it's blocked by Ottoman ships, an impossible sight that still makes you shake your head in disbelief. When the Ottomans couldn't break the massive harbor chain that protected the Golden Horn, Mehmed ordered his ships dragged overland on greased logs, bypassing the chain entirely. You witnessed this strange procession yourself, ships moving across land like massive wooden beasts. It was the moment many in the city realized the Sultan would stop at nothing to take Constantinople. On a nearby rooftop, you notice a family engaged in strange activity. They're digging in their rooftop garden, burying something wrapped in cloth. The father draws in the dirt afterward, making marks that look like Byzantine letters and symbols. You've seen others doing similar things in gardens and under floorboards throughout the city. People are hiding their valuables, coins, jewelry, religious relics, creating crude maps with Byzantine symbols so they can retrieve their treasures when things settle down. Many of these makeshift maps will never be used, their creators never returning to claim what they've hidden. A young scholar standing nearby notices your interest. "Rather pointless, isn't it?" he says quietly. "They're hiding treasures they'll never recover." He introduces himself as a student from the Imperial University. "Historians will argue about this day for centuries," he continues. "They'll debate whether Emperor Constantine could have evacuated more civilians by sea before the Ottomans secured the waters. The Venetian and Genoese ships could have taken thousands to safety, but Constantine insisted the city could hold." He shrugs. Perhaps he truly believed it. Perhaps he couldn't bear the thought of being the emperor who abandoned Constantinople. You climb down to help, passing stones up to men on rooftops. Everyone works without needing to discuss why. You all know street fighting is coming. Every home will become a fortress when the walls fall. Women bring out household items that might serve as weapons: kitchen knives, fire pokers, heavy tools. Children gather stones in baskets to be thrown from windows. A blacksmith hammers farming implements into crude spears and pikes. The metallic clang echoes through streets otherwise eerily quiet without the background thunder of cannons. "Save your strength," advises an old woman watching from her doorway. The real fighting won't start until dawn. They always attack at dawn. No one questions how she knows this. Perhaps she remembers other sieges, other attacks that Constantinople survived, but her eyes say she knows this time is different. As sunset approaches, something extraordinary happens. From your position on the rooftop, you witness the Ottoman army performing their evening prayers in perfect unison. Thousands of soldiers kneel toward Mecca, pressing their foreheads to the ground, then rising in perfectly choreographed movements. The sight is both beautiful and terrifying, beautiful in its discipline and devotion, terrifying in what it represents. These men are preparing their souls for the battle ahead, for glory in victory or paradise in death. Their faith gives them a certainty that chills your blood. The Imam's call to prayer carries clearly across the still evening air. Though you can't understand the Arabic words, their cadence and devotion need no translation. You glance at your fellow roof watchers. Some make the sign of the cross in response to the Muslim prayers. Others simply watch in silence. Religious differences fueled tensions between East and West for centuries, leaving Constantinople isolated when it most needed allies. Now those differences seem almost trivial in the face of shared humanity and mortality. As darkness falls, you see movement along the damaged walls. The city's remaining defenders take up their final positions. Torches illuminate groups of soldiers manning the repaired sections, checking weapons, adjusting armor. You recognize Emperor Constantine's personal standard flying near the St. Romanus Gate. The emperor himself will defend the most vulnerable point. Greek soldiers stand alongside Italian mercenaries, Orthodox fighters next to Catholics, all differences forgotten in this final stand. You remain on the rooftop, long after most others have gone below to rest before what tomorrow will bring. The night sky above Constantinople is clear, stars shining as they have for millennia, indifferent to the human drama playing out beneath them. The Ottoman campfires mirror the stars, a second sky of flames surrounding the city. Tomorrow, those fires will spread within these ancient walls. As you finally climb down to seek what rest you can find, a profound understanding settles in your mind. Whatever happens when the sun rises, the world will be irrevocably changed. If by some miracle Constantinople survives, nothing will be as it was before. And if it falls, as every instinct tells you it will, then tomorrow will mark the true end of the Roman Empire, over 1,000 years after Rome itself fell. You realize the next sunrise will illuminate a fundamentally changed world. Night of whispers and prayers. Darkness falls over Constantinople, but sleep is impossible as the city vibrates with tension. You lie awake, listening to every creak and whisper in your small home. Tonight feels different from all the nights before. The air itself seems heavier, charged with the collective fear of 50,000 souls waiting for dawn. Your neighbors have fallen silent. No evening conversations drift through thin walls. No laughter, no arguments. Just the occasional muffled sob quickly hushed by worried parents. Throughout the city, families have abandoned outer rooms to huddle together in central chambers. Your own family has done the same, dragging blankets and cushions into the sturdiest room of the house. Your aging mother sits in the corner, fingering her prayer beads and murmuring appeals to saints. Your sister's 2 children sleep fitfully beside her, too exhausted by fear to stay awake despite the tension. Your brother-in-law left hours ago to join the wall defenders after a tearful goodbye that felt too final. You step outside briefly, needing air that doesn't taste of fear. The usual nighttime sounds of Constantinople are gone. No merchants calling the day's final sales. No children playing in the last moments before bed. No evening prayers ringing from church towers. Instead, whispered conversations drift from darkened doorways. Muffled crying echoes from homes where privacy has become a luxury no one can afford. The city that has never truly slept for 1,000 years now lies awake in tense, collective dread. Through open windows, a new sound reaches you, rhythmic chanting from the Ottoman camps beyond the walls. Thousands of voices rise and fall in unison, punctuated by drums that pound a steady, ominous beat. The sound crawls under your skin, sets your teeth on edge. This is no spontaneous celebration, but calculated psychological warfare. The Ottomans know the sound carries over the walls, know that each beat chips away at the defenders' resolve as effectively as their cannons hammered the physical barriers. You understand the tactic, but that doesn't make it less effective. The drumming seeps into your bones, makes your heart race in unwanted synchronization. A flicker of torchlight at the street's end draws your attention. A procession approaches, the emperor and his remaining nobles making a final circuit of the city. Constantine walks at the center, his face solemn in the wavering light. No crown sits on his head, no imperial purple marks his clothing. He wears simple armor like any common soldier. The nobles who haven't fled follow behind him, their once rich garments now understated, their faces as grave as their emperors. The torches they carry cast long shadows that seem to reach toward you like grasping fingers. The procession passes without fanfare. No heralds announce the emperor's presence, no citizens cheer or bow. There's only quiet acknowledgement, nods of respect, a few whispered prayers. Constantine offers a blessing gesture to those gathered, his eyes meeting each person's gaze with surprising directness. When he looks at you, you glimpse something unexpected. Not fear or resignation, but a strange peace. You wonder if he has already accepted what tomorrow will bring and found some comfort in certainty, however terrible. As the imperial party continues down the street, you notice something curious about several children watching from doorways. Around their small wrists, their parents have tied red strings, bits of scarlet thread knotted with what appears to be specific patterns. An old woman notices your interest. An ancient custom, she explains quietly, from before Christianity came to our city. The red wards off evil spirits and marks the child for divine protection during times of great danger. She shrugs slightly. The priests don't approve, but tonight, who wouldn't seek every protection for their little ones? Back inside, your sister is organizing small bundles of possessions, one for each family member. Only what you can carry, she instructs, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, and only what might save your life. Each bundle contains a water flask, dried food, a change of clothing, and something to barter with. A small icon with silver edging, a pair of gold earrings, an ornate knife with a handle of carved bone. These items represent the culmination of your family's wealth, now reduced to what might purchase mercy from conquerors. As you help sort items, your thoughts drift to darker rumors you've heard throughout the day. Historians still argue whether many citizens committed suicide rather than face capture, particularly wealthy women who feared enslavement in Ottoman harems. You've heard whispered stories of noble families preparing poison, of mothers determined to send their daughters to death rather than dishonor. One of your neighbors, a prosperous silk merchant with 3 beautiful daughters, hasn't been seen all day. His house stands silent, shutters closed, door barred. You wonder, but dare not ask what preparations they might be making behind those walls. "Take this," your mother says suddenly, pressing something into your palm. It's a small vial, its contents dark. If the worst happens, she doesn't finish the sentence, doesn't need to. You pocket the vial without comment, hoping its contents will never be needed, but grateful for the choice it represents. Around midnight, something changes. The Ottoman drums and chants which have continued for hours suddenly stop. The camps beyond the walls fall completely silent. No more war cries, no more rhythmic pounding. Nothing. This absence of sound is more terrifying than any noise you've ever heard. The silence feels physical, pressing against your ears, choking your breath. Everyone in the room freezes, eyes meeting in shared understanding. The Ottomans are resting, conserving their strength for what comes with dawn. Your sister gathers her children, now awake and whimpering softly. She whispers instructions they've practiced throughout the day. If we're separated, seek Father Nicholas at the Church of St. Irene. If the church is taken, hide in the cisterns beneath the street of coppersmiths. Don't speak to soldiers. Don't run unless I tell you to run. The children nod solemnly, too young to fully understand, but old enough to recognize the gravity in their mother's voice. Throughout the city, similar scenes play out in thousands of homes. Parents whisper contingency plans to children. Friends make promises to look for one another after the chaos. Husbands and wives share final embraces that might truly be final. Priests move from house to house, offering quick blessings and shortened confessions. Everyone prepares not just materials, but souls for what morning will bring. Your nephew tugs at your sleeve, his small face serious in the lamplight. "Which saint should I pray to?" he asks. "To survive tomorrow?" You consider his question carefully. "Saint Nicholas protects children," you tell him, "and Saint Michael defends against enemies." You don't add that tomorrow may require miracles beyond any saint's power to deliver. Later, you step outside one final time before attempting sleep. The city lies under a blanket of stars. the same stars that have watched over Constantinople since its founding by the first Constantine over 1,000 years ago. The same stars that have seen empires rise and fall, borders drawn and redrawn, cities bloom and wither. How many other nights have people stood on this spot, looking up at these same stars, wondering if they would live to see the next sunset? The thought brings strange comfort. Whatever happens tomorrow, the stars will continue their journey across the sky, indifferent to the human drama below. You return inside, settle among your family, and close your eyes. Sleep seems impossible, yet your exhausted body eventually surrenders to it, carrying you into dreams filled with drum beats and crumbling walls. Your last conscious thought is a question that thousands of others ask simultaneously across the sleeping city. What will we become when the sun rises? The final assault begins. You're jolted awake before dawn by a sound like the world ending. Your body reacts before your mind fully wakes, heart racing, breath catching in your throat. It's still dark, but the noise leaves no doubt. Thousands of Ottoman war drums and horns signal the beginning of the final assault. The sound isn't just loud, it physically shakes the walls of your home, rattling cups from shelves and dust from ceiling beams. This isn't the now familiar boom of cannons. This is something new, the battle cry of an entire army ready to claim its prize. You throw on clothes and rush outside. Neighbors pour from doorways, faces pale in the pre-dawn darkness. Without speaking, many head toward rooftops, drawn by the human need to witness disaster even when escape is impossible. You follow, climbing steep wooden stairs to your building's flat roof. The sight that greets you freezes the blood in your veins. The horizon glows orange and red, but not from the coming sunrise. Thousands of torches illuminate the Ottoman lines, their light reflecting off armor and weapons. The massive army moves with shocking coordination, wave after wave surging toward the walls like a human tide. From this distance, individual soldiers blur into a single organism, flowing toward Constantinople's damaged defenses with terrible purpose. "They're sending the irregulars first," says an old veteran standing beside you. His face shows no fear, only professional assessment, Bashi bazooks and provincial levies. "Mehmed's sacrificing his less valuable troops to tire out our defenders before committing the Janissaries." The man spits over the edge of the roof. Smart strategy, cruel but smart. Even from your rooftop you can see the truth of his words. The first attackers wear mismatched armor, carry diverse weapons. These aren't the Sultan's elite forces, but mercenaries and conscripts from across his empire, expendable men sent to absorb the defenders' initial resistance. Behind them wait more organized units, their formations tight, their weapons uniform, and behind those, barely visible in torchlight, stand the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite slave soldiers, Christian boys taken as tribute and raised to be the perfect warriors. They wait patiently for their moment. The city's remaining cannons fire into the advancing mass. Each shot illuminates the scene in a brief, horrific tableau, countless attackers momentarily frozen in ghostly light, then swallowed again by darkness. Crossbow bolts rain down from the walls, each one finding a target in the packed mass of humanity below. But for every attacker who falls, 10 more take his place. Church bells begin to ring across Constantinople. Not the measured tolling that marks prayers or hours, but chaotic, panicked clanging. Different churches ring at different rhythms, creating a cacophony that sounds like the city itself is screaming. The sound mingles with the Ottoman war drums and the growing cries of combat to create a hellish symphony. You watch, transfixed, as the first wave reaches the walls. Ladders appear, raised against the stone fortifications. Defenders push them back, only to face more. From this distance, the individual struggles blur together, but the pattern is clear. The walls are too long, the defenders too few. For every ladder repelled, 2 more find purchase. "They're using heated sand," your rooftop companion comments, pointing to a section of wall where defenders pour something from large containers onto the attackers below. Nasty business, gets under armor, burns the skin, something terrible. No field surgeon can do much for those wounds. The sand keeps burning into the flesh. He speaks with the detached interest of someone who has both used such tactics and suffered them. Better than boiling oil, though. Less risk of burning your own men when it splashes back. You've heard enough. Standing on the rooftop won't change what's happening, and there are ways to help. You climb down and join streams of civilians heading toward the walls. The streets fill with people moving with purpose. Men carrying weapons join the defense. Women bring water and supplies. Children run messages between sections of the wall. Constantinople may fall today, but it won't fall without resistance. You join a civilian brigade, passing water to the defenders. The line stretches from a neighborhood cistern to a section of wall near the St. Romanus Gate. You take your place, passing heavy buckets from hand to hand. The water isn't just for drinking. It cools overheated cannon barrels and douses small fires started by flaming arrows. Soon your arms ache from the effort, but you keep working. What else can you do? As you pass buckets, wounded defenders stream past in the opposite direction. Men with arrows protruding from shoulders and legs, faces burned by Greek fire or heated sand. Some walk under their own power, others are carried on makeshift stretchers. Their numbers grow with each passing minute. You try not to count them. Try not to think about what those numbers mean for the city's chances. Historians still argue whether the defenders could have concentrated more effectively on the weakest sections rather than trying to hold the entire perimeter. Some argue that Emperor Constantine made a fatal error in spreading his limited forces across the entire length of the walls. Others contend he had no choice. Abandoning any section would have guaranteed a breach. Standing here now, passing water to exhausted men, the debate seems meaningless. These defenders are fighting where they stand, holding their positions with whatever strength remains to them. The eastern sky lightens as dawn approaches. The full scale of the assault becomes visible with the growing light. It's even worse than you imagined. The Ottoman army seems endless, stretching beyond what your eye can see. They attack not just at the St. Romanus Gate, but at multiple points along the wall. Their strategy becomes clear: pressure everywhere, breakthrough somewhere. A terrible cheer rises from outside the walls, not the defenders celebrating a victory, but Ottoman troops roaring in triumph. Looking up, you see what has caused their excitement. Ottoman standards are being planted on sections of the outer fortifications. Not just one flag, but many, appearing at different points along the wall. The first line of defense has fallen in multiple places. The civilian water brigade breaks up as people scatter in panic. Defense has become retreat. Soldiers fall back from the outer wall to the middle wall of the Theodosian fortifications. The complex defense system, designed centuries ago with multiple layers specifically to prevent a single breach from being fatal, now faces its ultimate test. But the middle wall, is already damaged from weeks of cannon fire. And the innermost wall was always the weakest of the three. As you watch defenders racing to new positions, discarding shields and heavy equipment to move faster, the truth hits you with sickening clarity. The Theodosian walls, Constantinople's legendary protection for 1,000 years, have finally failed. A soldier runs past, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Get to the inner city," he shouts at everyone he passes. "The outer walls are lost. Save yourselves." His words send civilians running in panic toward the city center. You stand frozen, watching the retreat, unable to fully process what's happening. Then the reality sinks in. You're witnessing the beginning of the end of the Eastern Roman Empire. The world you've known your entire life is collapsing before your eyes, and nothing will ever be the same again. The walls are breached. The morning sun breaks over Constantinople, illuminating your worst nightmare. Ottoman soldiers swarm through multiple breaches in the walls near the Lycus Valley. The blue and gold uniforms of the elite Janissaries stand out among the more irregular troops as they pour through the gaps in disciplined formations. Their movements are precise, methodical, nothing like the chaos you expected. This isn't a wild rush of looters, but a coordinated military operation. The Janissaries move in tight units, securing each street before advancing to the next. These men have trained their entire lives for this moment, and it shows in their deadly efficiency. Byzantine defenders rush to the breach points, attempting to form a last line of resistance. They drag furniture, carts, even religious statues to create barricades across the main thoroughfares, anything to slow the Ottoman advance. Civilians flee in the opposite direction, streaming toward the center of the city. You find yourself caught in this human flood, bodies pressing against you from all sides as the crowd surges away from the fighting. "Keep moving," someone shouts near you. "They've broken through at 3 points already." The panic in his voice mirrors what you see on every face around you. People carry whatever they could grab in the moment. Small bundles of clothing, family treasures, crying children. An elderly man stumbles and falls beside you. You help him up, but the crowd immediately separates you, carrying you forward in its unstoppable flow. The sound of combat grows closer with each passing minute. Metal strikes metal in a terrible rhythm. Men shout orders in both Greek and Turkish. The wounded scream. Above it all rises the distinctive battle cry of the Janissaries, Allah! Allah! A sound designed to terrify their enemies and coordinate their attacks. These aren't common soldiers, but the Sultan's elite troops, Christian boys taken as tribute and raised from childhood to be perfect warriors. They fight with religious fervor for their adopted faith and absolute loyalty to their Sultan. You turn a corner and nearly collide with a group of defenders in retreat. Their armor bears the scratches and dents of recent combat, and their faces show exhaustion beyond anything you've seen during the siege. One man's shield arm hangs useless at his side, the limb clearly broken. Another has lost his helmet, revealing a head wound that streaks his face with blood. Yet they continue to fall back in good order, slowing the Ottoman advance where they can. Smoke rises from multiple points in the city. Some fires have been set by retreating defenders, creating obstacles to slow the Ottoman advance. Others mark the path of the first looters, irregular troops and camp followers who break away from the main Ottoman forces to grab what they can. The smoke turns the morning sky a sickly gray, and breathing becomes more difficult as you move through narrow streets now filling with acrid haze. Near a small church, you witness something strange. Several civilians, men and women both, hurriedly don religious garments passed out by a frantic priest. They pull monks' robes over their ordinary clothes or arrange nuns' habits around their heads. The priest speaks rapidly as he distributes the garments. The Sultan respects holy men and women, he explains. Mehmed is educated, civilized. He may spare those in religious dress. Whether this desperate strategy will work, no one knows, but people grasp at any hope in these desperate moments. As you continue moving with the crowd, fragments of rumor pass from person to person. The most disturbing concerns a small postern gate near the Blashane Palace. Supposedly it was found open, allowing Ottoman forces to enter the city from a second direction, catching defenders in a pincer movement. Historians still argue whether this gate was left open by accident or treachery. Some accounts blame a careless guard who failed to secure it after a night sortie. Others whisper of paid traitors within the Byzantine ranks. Whatever the truth, the result is the same. Ottoman soldiers now approach from multiple directions, making organized defense nearly impossible. The crowd thins as you reach a small square, allowing you to catch your breath. Across the open space, a group of Byzantine soldiers makes a startling choice in plain view. They strip the imperial insignia from their armor and shields, removing anything that identifies them as military defenders. Some are clearly preparing to flee, hoping to pass as ordinary citizens. Others have a different purpose. They wish to die fighting as anonymous Christians rather than as marked defenders who might be singled out for special humiliation if captured. One soldier catches you watching. "The end comes," he says simply. Each man meets it in his own way. You continue toward the inner city, but progress becomes more difficult. Streets narrow and crowd with refugees. At a major intersection, everything stops. People pack so densely you can barely breathe. No one moves forward or back. Then a terrible murmur begins at the edge of the crowd, passing from person to person like a wave. At first, you can't make out the words, but as the message reaches you, your heart sinks. The emperor is fallen. Constantine is dead. No one knows exactly how Emperor Constantine III Palaiologos met his end. Some say he was cut down, fighting anonymously among common soldiers at the breach point, having removed his imperial insignia so the Ottomans couldn't identify his body and display it as a trophy. Others claim he fought to the last at the St. Romanus Gate, surrounded by his loyal guards. Many believe he disappeared in the chaos, his fate forever unknown, but the effect of the news is immediate and devastating. Without their emperor, the remaining chain of command collapses completely. You watch the transformation happen before your eyes. Officers who moments ago were organizing an orderly retreat now look to their own survival. Soldiers who stood firm now break ranks. Organized resistance transforms into individual survival as the Ottomans secure control of the outer city districts. Some defenders continue fighting in isolated pockets, but without coordination, their brave stands become futile sacrifices. A group of women wails in unison as the news spreads, the sound cutting through the general chaos like a knife. 900 years, an old man shouts to no one in particular. 900 years since Constantine the Great, and now it ends with another Constantine. The historical symmetry seems to affect him more deeply than the immediate danger. For some, the fall of Constantinople isn't just about physical survival, but the end of an unbroken connection to ancient Rome itself. The crowd finally begins moving again, pushing you along regardless of your intentions. You glimpse Ottoman soldiers at cross streets in the distance, methodically securing each area before moving deeper into the city. Their discipline stands in stark contrast to the panicked flight of the civilians. As the morning wears on, the realization settles over everyone. The outer city is lost. The Ottomans control the walls, the gates, and nearly a third of Constantinople already. The question isn't whether the city will fall, but how many hours remain before the conquest is complete. Chaos in the streets. The city descends into pure chaos as Ottoman forces spread through the streets. A symphony of horror builds around you, glass shattering as looters break into shops, wood splintering as doors are forced open, metal clashing against metal where pockets of resistance make their final stands. And above it all, the human sounds. Orders shouted in Turkish, pleas for mercy in Greek, the weeping of children separated from parents in the crush. This is the fall of Constantinople. Not in historical abstractions, but in immediate, overwhelming sensory assault. You're pushed along with a crowd flowing like water toward the Hagia Sophia. No one discusses the destination, everyone simply knows. For 900 years, the great church has stood at Constantinople's heart. Its massive dome has survived earthquakes, civil wars, and previous sieges. If anywhere might offer sanctuary, surely those sacred walls will provide protection where the city's fortifications failed. You let yourself be carried along, partly by choice, partly because resistance to the human current is impossible. The Hagia Sophia, gasps an old woman stumbling beside you. The Sultan won't destroy it. Even Mehmed respects holy places. You wonder if she's trying to convince you or herself. Either way, it's the only hope available, so you nod and help her keep pace with the crowd. At each intersection, fear ripples through the group. Ottoman soldiers appear with increasing frequency, establishing control of major thoroughfares with ruthless efficiency. Some units focus purely on military objectives, securing crossroads, disarming any remaining defenders, establishing clear routes for their reinforcements. Others have clearly been given different orders. You watch as they kick in doors of homes and businesses, emerging minutes later laden with silks, jewelry, icons, anything of obvious value. Sultan Mehmed has permitted 3 days of sanctioned plunder, the traditional reward for troops who take a city by force rather than surrender. You've heard this discussed during the siege, but witnessing the reality is something else entirely. A family is dragged from their home across the street. The soldiers assess them with cold efficiency, separating them by apparent value. The young woman and her teenage brother are bound together with others deemed suitable for the slave markets. The elderly parents are pushed roughly aside, not worth the trouble of transporting and selling. The young woman reaches desperately toward her mother as she's marched away, but a soldier shoves her forward with the butt of his spear. You avert your eyes, knowing you can't help without sharing their fate. The crowd carries you forward, away from the scene. Smoke thickens as more buildings catch fire. Some blazes start accidentally in the chaos. Others are deliberately set by looters covering their tracks or by defenders creating obstacles. Breathing becomes difficult. Your eyes water. The streets transform into obstacle courses of abandoned possessions, dropped bundles, scattered household items, religious objects thrown aside by looters after stripping their gold decoration. In some places, you must step over fallen masonry where Ottoman cannon fire damaged buildings near the walls. In other spots, there are things you try not to look at too closely. Shapes covered hastily with cloaks or tapestries by those who passed before you, showing the basic human dignity that survives even in chaos. Near a small market square, you witness an unexpected scene. A silk merchant, you recognize him from previous visits to the bazaar, stands before his shop speaking rapidly to 3 Ottoman soldiers. Rather than fleeing or fighting, he's negotiating. He holds out a small chest, opens it to reveal gleaming jewelry and gold coins. For protection, he says in broken Turkish. Good business. You guard family, I give treasure. The soldiers confer briefly, then the leader nods. 2 position themselves at the merchant's door while the 3rd follows him inside, presumably to verify no tricks are being played. Quick thinker, that one, mutters a man beside you. Better to lose half your wealth than all your family. Similar scenes play out elsewhere, as those with resources attempt to buy safety in the chaos. Some succeed. For others, showing wealth only makes them more tempting targets. The brutality you witness varies strangely from street to street, soldier to soldier. Some Ottoman troops behave with surprising restraint, following clear orders about what they can and cannot do. Others indulge in the worst excesses of conquering armies throughout history. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman advance was as brutal as Byzantine accounts claim, or if much of the violence was exaggerated in later Christian narratives seeking to demonize the Muslim conquerors. Standing here now, you understand both perspectives might contain truth. The reality is inconsistent, depending on which soldiers you encounter and which officer commands them. As you pass a small courtyard, you notice several citizens wearing green armbands or head coverings that weren't common in the city before today. An older man explains in a whisper, signals of conversion. They're declaring themselves Muslims, hoping to be spared. The strategy appears partially successful. Ottoman soldiers pass these groups with minimal harassment, though whether from respect for new co-religionists or simple focus on more valuable targets remains unclear. Through gaps between buildings, you catch glimpses of the Golden Horn, where Ottoman ships now dock freely at Constantinople's ports. Naval officers direct the loading of plunder and captives. From other directions come sounds of celebration as Ottoman troops reach objectives they've targeted for weeks. This isn't random violence, but the implementation of a carefully planned conquest of a prize the Ottomans have desired for over a century. Finally, through thinning smoke, you see it. The massive dome of the Hagia Sophia appears, still standing majestically above the chaos that engulfs the streets below. For a moment, your heart lifts. Then you notice the plaza before the great church. Ottoman troops already fill the space, their commanders establishing clear control of the approaches to Christianity's greatest church in the east. Some soldiers form a perimeter, while others stand ready to enter. Their discipline is remarkable. No rushing, no individual looting, just calm preparation. These must be the Sultan's personal guards acting on specific orders regarding this most valuable prize. Rumors have spread for weeks that Mehmed doesn't want the Hagia Sophia damaged but converted into a mosque, the ultimate symbol of his triumph. Your group fragments as reality sinks in. The Hagia Sophia offers no sanctuary. Some continue forward anyway, perhaps hoping for mercy inside sacred walls or simply having nowhere else to go. Others make quick, desperate choices, diving into side streets, slipping into abandoned buildings, or seeking hidden courtyards. A family pulls aside a wooden panel revealing a narrow passage between buildings. They disappear inside, replacing the panel behind them. A woman and her children descend steps to what must be one of the city's ancient cisterns. An old man simply sits on a doorstep, too exhausted to run further. You hesitate at this crossroads, both literally and figuratively. The Hagia Sophia stands before you, Ottoman troops between you and its doors. Narrow alleys offer alternative paths with unknown destinations. All options contain their own dangers. All hope seems to rest on a single question: how to somehow survive until this storm passes, if it ever does. The fall of Hagia Sophia. You reach the Hagia Sophia only to find its massive bronze doors have been smashed open. Ottoman soldiers stream in and out, their weapons still drawn, their armor spattered with evidence of the morning's fighting. The great church that has stood at Constantinople's heart for 900 years, the greatest church in all of Christendom, has fallen. You hesitate at the entrance, but the crowd behind pushes you forward into a scene that will haunt you for the rest of your life. The interior that normally inspires hushed reverence is now transformed into something from a nightmare. The great dome still soars overhead, sunlight streaming through its windows to create columns of light in the smoky air. But the space below has become unrecognizable. The vast marble floor where emperors knelt and patriarchs blessed the faithful now hosts a different ceremony, the dismantling of a millennium of Christian worship. Despite the chaos, a small group of priests continues conducting services at the far altar. Their voices waver, but don't stop as they recite prayers that have echoed in this space since the days of Justinian. Ottoman soldiers move through the crowd around them, pointing to individuals who are then pulled away. Young men and women, primarily, separated from families and added to groups of captives. Others soldiers focus on the church's legendary treasures, efficiently removing golden candelabras, silver reliquaries, and bejeweled icons from their places. You press yourself against a massive column, trying to become invisible in its shadow. The magnificent mosaics above seem to watch the scene with expressions frozen in time. Christ Pantocrator in the dome, the Virgin Mary cradling the infant Jesus, Byzantine emperors in their glory offering gifts to God. These holy figures have witnessed 9 centuries of worship beneath them. Now they look down impassively as their millennium of veneration comes to its violent end. A group of janissaries moves methodically through your section of the church. Unlike some of the irregular troops you've seen in the streets, these elite soldiers maintain strict discipline. They don't shout or run, but walk with purpose, following clear orders. One stops an older soldier who has grabbed a golden cross from a side altar, speaking sharply in Turkish. You don't understand the words, but the meaning is clear when the older man reluctantly returns the cross to its place. Some items are being protected, perhaps reserved for the Sultan himself. Near a side chapel, something disturbing unfolds. A group of nuns huddles together, their habits making them immediately identifiable. As Ottoman soldiers approach, one of the younger sisters does something shocking. She grabs a heavy silver candlestick from the altar and drags its rough edge across her face, drawing blood. Others follow her example, deliberately disfiguring themselves with nearby religious implements. You turn away from the sight, but you understand their desperate calculus. They're choosing to destroy their beauty rather than face capture for Ottoman harems. Better to be overlooked as damaged goods than to endure what they fear awaits attractive captives. The church's famous acoustics, designed to amplify prayers and hymns, now work against everyone inside. Every shout, every cry, every crash, as centuries of accumulated treasures are torn from walls and altars, magnifies and rebounds through the vast space. A golden chalice crashes to the marble floor near you, rolling to a stop against your foot. You kick it away instinctively, wanting nothing that might draw attention. A soldier retrieves it without even glancing in your direction, adding it to a growing pile of treasures being collected at a central point. A debate still rages among historians whether Sultan Mehmed II personally entered the Hagia Sophia that day, or if his famous moment of standing at the altar came the following day after the violence had subsided. Some accounts describe him entering while fighting still raged in parts of the city, immediately ordering an end to damage within the church. Others insist he waited until the city was fully secured before making his triumphant entry into his greatest prize. Either way, his plans for the building have clearly been communicated to his troops. The structure itself must remain intact, regardless of what happens to its contents or its people. The crowd shifts suddenly as a new group of Ottoman soldiers enters the main doors. These men wear more elaborate uniforms, officers perhaps, or special guards. They move with authority, shouting orders that cause even the janissaries to adjust their activities. One soldier, clearly of high rank based on how others defer to him, surveys the scene with visible displeasure. He confers briefly with his subordinates, then climbs the steps to the pulpit. "This building," he announces in broken Greek, his voice carrying through the church's perfect acoustics, "is now under protection of Sultan Mehmed, conqueror of Constantinople." He pauses as a translator repeats his words in better Greek. "It will become Mosque of Islam. Holy place remains holy place." Another pause for translation. "Those who accept Ottoman rule may leave unharmed. Those who resist—" He doesn't complete the sentence, but his meaning is perfectly clear in the way his hand rests on his sword hilt. The pronouncement hangs in the air. This unexpected mercy, being allowed to simply walk away, seems almost impossible after the morning's violence. Yet the officer's demeanor suggests he's deadly serious. The Sultan wants the Hagia Sophia, not a massacre within its walls that might taint his triumph or damage the building he intends to make the central mosque of his new capital. People react differently to this announcement. Some move immediately toward the doors, heads bowed, accepting this chance for survival, no matter what it means for their faith or their city. Others remain frozen in place, unable to process that their world has ended in a single day, that the greatest church in Eastern Christianity will become a mosque before sunset. The priests at the altar finally fall silent, their liturgy interrupted mid-sentence. One elderly cleric sinks to his knees, tears streaming into his white beard as he gazes up at the dome for what he must know will be the last time as a Christian. You find yourself moving with those heading for the doors. Living another day seems the only victory possible now. Outside, the afternoon sun blinds you momentarily after the dim interior. The plaza before the church has been organized into a staging area. Ottoman troops direct the flow of people, separating those who might have value as slaves or ransoms from those who may simply leave. A woman beside you is pulled from the line, added to a group of captives despite her protests. A skilled craftsman, you recognize him as a renowned goldsmith, is directed to a different area, his professional abilities marking him for incorporation into Ottoman society rather than enslavement. You pass through the checkpoints without being singled out, your plain clothing and unremarkable appearance working in your favor for once. Beyond the immediate vicinity of the Hagia Sophia, the city continues its transformation. Ottoman flags already fly from buildings that displayed Christian symbols this morning. The ancient city that woke as Constantinople is falling asleep as the future Istanbul, and you have somehow survived to witness its first day under new masters. A city transformed. As afternoon shadows lengthen across a conquered Constantinople, you emerge from hiding to witness your city's transformation happening with shocking speed. Just hours after the walls fell, the Ottoman invaders have shifted from conquest to governance with remarkable efficiency. What took other conquerors days or weeks to establish, Mehmed's forces accomplish in mere hours. You rub your tired eyes, still unable to fully comprehend how completely your world has changed since dawn. Ottoman soldiers establish control points at major intersections, checking papers and directing traffic with practiced efficiency. These aren't the wild, irregular troops who first breached the walls, but disciplined units clearly following a predetermined plan. They carry sticks to direct people rather than drawn swords, though weapons remain ready at their sides. The message is clear. Order has returned, but it's Ottoman order now. Other soldiers move methodically through the streets, already removing Christian symbols from public buildings. You watch as a team uses ropes to pull down a bronze cross that has topped the public fountain in your neighborhood square for generations. They work without anger or celebration, simply completing an assigned task. The cross crashes to the ground, and within minutes, a crescent moon stands in its place. The Sultan's heralds move through the streets, stopping at each intersection to announce new rules in both Turkish and Greek. Their voices carry clearly as crowds gather to listen in stunned silence. By decree of Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople and lord of the horizons, one herald proclaims, "Those who surrender peacefully will not be harmed. Those who convert to the true faith will receive special protection. Those who fought and continue to resist may be taken as lawful plunder for 3 days, as is the custom of war." The 3-day looting period was expected. It's standard practice for cities taken by force, but the specific protections for peaceful surrender and conversion weren't anticipated. Many had expected wholesale slaughter or enslavement. This calculated mercy takes them by surprise. The city that woke as the center of Eastern Christianity is falling asleep as the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. The change is visible in every direction. Church bells, which normally would ring for evening prayers, stand silent. Shop owners who managed to survive the day's chaos cautiously reopen, but now conduct transactions under the watchful eyes of Ottoman guards. Women adjust their clothing, covering more of their faces than Byzantine custom required. Children stare wide-eyed at the strange soldiers in their unfamiliar uniforms. Finding yourself near one of the city's 7 hills, you climb to a vantage point overlooking much of Constantinople. Ottoman flags now fly from every major building. The imperial palace, administrative offices, military barracks, all now display the crescent rather than the cross. Workers are already whitewashing Christian murals on exterior walls of public buildings. The speed of the transformation makes your head spin. Your gaze turns toward the harbor where Ottoman ships dock freely, unloading supplies and additional troops. This isn't a temporary raid, but a permanent change of ownership. Near the former Byzantine tax office, you notice something unexpected. Ottoman officers in clean uniforms, not battle-stained like the frontline troops, carefully measure the building's dimensions. One sketches in a bound book, while others stretch measuring ropes between columns. A local Greek-speaking merchant watches nearby, and you quietly ask what they're doing. "Planning," he whispers. These aren't just soldiers, they're architects and engineers. The Sultan brought them to assess buildings for his new projects. That young Mehmed has big dreams. They say he plans libraries, bathhouses, and schools. He's not destroying Constantinople. He's remaking it in Ottoman style. The idea that the conquerors brought architects along with their armies speaks volumes about Mehmed's long-term vision. He didn't just want to conquer your city, he wanted to transform it into something new. Historians still argue whether Mehmed's relatively merciful treatment of the city was motivated by practical governance concerns or genuine respect for Constantinople's legacy. Some claim he truly admired Byzantine civilization and wanted to preserve its achievements while bringing them under Islamic rule. Others maintain his moderation was purely practical. Damaged cities generate less tax revenue, and dead subjects can't serve their new master. Standing here watching the efficient occupation unfold, you suspect both perspectives contain some truth. The Sultan clearly values what he's captured and wants to build upon it rather than erase it completely. As you continue through the streets, you pass a schoolyard where Greek-speaking Ottoman officials organize citizens into groups. They separate people based on skills and professions, not on wealth or appearance as you might expect from conquerors primarily interested in slaves and plunder. Stonemasons gather in one corner, silversmiths in another. Scholars, physicians, and artists receive particular attention, with officials recording their names and specialties in leather-bound ledgers. The Sultan collects talent like others collect gold, explains an elderly teacher who has just been interviewed and assigned to the scholars group. Skilled craftsmen, artists, and learned men will be incorporated into Ottoman society, not enslaved. Mehmed styles himself a successor to Roman emperors, not their destroyer. He wants Constantinople to remain a center of learning and craftsmanship, just under his flag now. Not everyone receives such consideration, of course. Young people without valuable skills are still being processed as slaves. Wealthy families without special talents face heavy ransoms. Those identified as having fought against the Ottomans await harsh punishment. The Sultan's mercy extends exactly as far as his practical interests dictate. No further. As sunset approaches, something happens that makes the transformation of your city undeniably real. From a wooden structure hastily constructed beside the Hagia Sophia, a voice cries out in Arabic. The first muezzin's call to prayer echoes across a city that has known only church bells for nearly 1,000 years. The sound is hauntingly beautiful, a melodic, soulful call that floats over rooftops and down narrow streets. Yet that same beauty breaks your heart, for it represents the final victory of the conquerors. The voice calls the faithful to bow toward Mecca, not to venerate the Virgin Mary or saints of the Orthodox Church. People stop in the streets, listening in silence. Some weep quietly, others instinctively make the sign of the cross, then glance around nervously to see if anyone noticed. A few, a very few, kneel on small rugs, facing southeast, already embracing the new order. You stand motionless, letting the foreign sounds wash over you, wondering how something can be simultaneously so beautiful and so terrible. The city that was Constantinople is already becoming Istanbul, and now you face the most difficult decision of your life. Do you attempt escape, perhaps seeking a ship bound for Venice or other Christian lands? Do you accept Ottoman rule, perhaps even convert to ease your way under the new regime? Or might there be some middle path, maintaining your faith quietly while outwardly conforming to whatever is necessary to survive? Throughout the city, 50,000 former Byzantines face this same choice, each weighing personal safety against tradition, practical needs against spiritual convictions. As darkness falls on this longest of days, you realize that surviving the conquest was only the first challenge. Now comes the harder part, determining who you will become in this transformed world where nothing remains certain except change itself. Night falls on a new era. Darkness settles over the conquered city, bringing not the end you feared this morning, but something more complex. As night spreads its cloak over Constantinople, you realize you're experiencing the beginning of an entirely new chapter in history. The anxiety that kept you moving through streets filled with chaos and violence now transforms into a different kind of tension, the uncertain weight of survival when everything familiar has been stripped away. You've found temporary shelter in a damaged church with other survivors. The building isn't one of the city's famous sanctuaries, but a modest neighborhood chapel. Its roof has partially collapsed from cannon fire days earlier, but the walls remain solid and the small side room where you gather stays dry despite the evening breeze. Around 24 people huddle together, families, lone survivors, a wounded soldier, an elderly deacon who tends the church. All of you sit in near silence, processing the impossible reality that Byzantine Constantinople no longer exists. "I was born in this city," whispers an old woman, her voice barely audible. "My father was born here, and his father before him. Now I'll die in a different place without ever leaving." No one contradicts her, though the city's streets and buildings remain exactly where they stood yesterday. The place itself continues, but its soul has been fundamentally altered in a single day. Outside, the sounds of the city have transformed. The screams and clash of weapons from this morning have faded, replaced by new acoustic signatures. Ottoman military commands called out in Turkish, the movements of new authorities establishing control, horses with unfamiliar harness bells, and beneath it all, the quiet weeping of those mourning what was lost. Even the rhythm of the city sounds different. No church bells mark the hours, no Byzantine street calls punctuate the evening. Through the church's broken windows, you see the difference in the night skyline. Lanterns illuminate Sultan Mehmed's pavilion, now erected in the Augustine Square, where Byzantine emperors once addressed their subjects. The massive tent glows from within, casting long shadows as Ottoman officials come and go in steady procession. The Sultan himself may be inside, already governing his prize, or perhaps still overseeing the final securing of the city's outer districts. Either way, his presence dominates Constantinople even in darkness. The fires that raged earlier in the day are now being controlled. Teams of Ottoman firefighters work efficiently, dumping water on smaller blazes and creating fire breaks around larger ones. The Sultan wants his new capital intact, not reduced to ashes like so many conquered cities throughout history. This calculated preservation strikes you as both merciful and somehow more terrifying. This is not a temporary raid, but a permanent possession, with the conquerors already protecting their investment. "They're sleeping in our beds tonight," mutters a merchant sitting nearby. He'd escaped from the harbor district with nothing but the clothes he wore. I watched them through my neighbor's window as I fled. Ottoman soldiers lounging on Byzantine furniture, trying our wines, wearing our robes. They looked so comfortable. The observation contains a truth you hadn't considered. While you hide in damaged buildings, many Ottoman soldiers are already sleeping in Byzantine homes, using unfamiliar furniture and belongings with the casual entitlement of conquerors. A scholarly-looking man with ink-stained fingers speaks up for the first time since arriving at the shelter. "Future generations will mark this day," he says quietly. "This isn't just the fall of a city, but the end of an era. The last direct connection to ancient Rome has been severed." His words hang in the air as people consider their significance. Historians still argue whether the fall of Constantinople truly marked the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the early modern period, as many textbooks claim. But sitting here tonight, you feel the weight of historical transition pressing down like a physical force. As the night deepens, conversations among your group grow more practical. You listen as survivors share whispered plans. A family with relatives in Venice will try to reach Italian ships rumored to be accepting refugees from small hidden docks on the city's southern shore. Two craftsmen have decided to stay, believing their skills will be valued by the new regime. "The Ottomans appreciate good metalwork," one explains. "My grandfather worked under the Seljuks before coming to Constantinople. He said they paid better than the Byzantines and didn't care what god you prayed to as long as the work was good." "We're too old to start again," the husband says. "Our home still stands. If they let us keep it, we'll adapt to Ottoman rule. If not," he shrugs. "We've lived full lives already." His wife nods in agreement, her hand tightening around his. Their quiet dignity in the face of complete uncertainty touches you deeply. The night grows colder as clouds obscure the stars. Someone produces a blanket and passes it to a mother with small children. Another shares dried fruit from a pocket, perhaps their only food, generously divided. Then something unexpected happens. A middle-aged man you hadn't noticed before reaches into his robe and produces a hidden flask. "Cretan wine," he says, "the finest in the empire." The former empire. A sad smile crosses his face. "I was saving it for my daughter's wedding next month. Now it seems better shared among friends." Some take small sips, others merely touch it to their lips in respect. No one drinks deeply. This isn't about intoxication but connection. A final communion in the city that was Christendom's eastern heart for over 1,000 years. When the flask comes to you, the sweet wine tastes of both sorrow and strange hope. In this simple act of sharing, some essential element of your civilization continues, even as the world around you transforms. The deacon who tends the church offers no objection to this unorthodox sacrament. Instead, he waits until the flask returns to its owner, then speaks quietly. "Remember that our faith began under Roman persecution. It survived under Persian rule, Arab sieges, Latin occupation. It will survive this too, whether here or elsewhere." His calm certainty offers comfort, though whether his prediction will prove true remains to be seen. As exhaustion overcomes anxiety, people settle into whatever positions offer some comfort on the hard floor. A child's soft snore breaks the silence, somehow the most normal sound in this most abnormal of days. You find a spot against the wall, using your folded cloak as a thin pillow. Sleep seems impossible after everything you've witnessed, yet your body demands it. As you drift toward exhausted sleep, a profound realization settles in your mind. You've witnessed the end of an empire that traced its roots back to ancient Rome itself. The political continuity that stretched from Augustus to Constantine the Thliss and Palaiologos, nearly 15 centuries of unbroken imperial tradition, terminated on this very day. Future generations will read about this moment in historical texts, struggling to comprehend its significance. But you lived it, breathed it, survived it. Tomorrow will bring new challenges in a city transformed, but tonight, history pivots around you as you close your eyes on the first evening of a new era. Conclusion. The story fades now, the images softening as Constantinople's final day recedes into history. A single day that changed the world forever, where empires shifted and lives transformed in mere hours. Remember those walls you saw crumbling this morning? They would stand for centuries more, though now protecting a Muslim capital rather than a Christian one. A reminder that even in endings, something always continues. Now, as your breathing slows and your mind drifts, know that you've walked through one of history's great pivots, not as a general or emperor, but as an ordinary person caught in extraordinary times. Sleep well knowing you've survived this day.